Chapter 571. Dr. Kong almost died, yes. Yes. Let's eat dog meat. Dr. Kong perked up. Xiaoming's idea is still the best. Since the dog ate the pill of life extension and toxin cleansing, let's eat the dog. It should have some effect, right? The rest of the Kong family felt that it made sense. So, the Kong family quickly cooked the dog meat. The dog was really strong, and the whole family ate it for an entire night before the dog meat was all gone. Everyone wanted to extend their lifespan, and while ensuring that miracle Dr. Kong had enough to eat, the others all fought to eat as well. In the end, they had to force themselves to eat, waiting for a miracle to happen. However, their idea was good, but the actual result was sad. On the second day, other than everyone eating too much and shitting more than usual, there was no effect at all. The dog meat was basically wasted. Dr. Kang's heart ached. What an eventful time. Wasn't the Kong family's bad luck a little too much? His heart was bleeding. He had worked so hard to save up 400 million yuan, and now it was gone just like that. Grandpa, since the dog ate the pill of life extension and toxin cleansing, he probably couldn't digest it completely, right? There might even be some pill of life extension and toxin cleansing in the dog poop. Why don't I try eating some dog poop? Kong Ming's brain worked. Since the dog meat had no effect, he turned his attention to the dog poop. Dr. Kong heard Kong Ming's words and felt that it made sense. There might really be some pill of life extension and toxin cleansing in the dog poop. If he let Kong Ming eat it, Kong Ming might just get lucky again. So, Dr. Kong gritted his teeth and said, "I'll eat it. You already ate it last time. Let me try it this time." There wasn't a lot of dog poop, so everyone coveted it. However, since Dr. Kong had spoken, the descendants of the Kong family could only give this precious opportunity to eat dog poop to Dr. Kong. This time, the dog poop was much smellier than usual. However, in order to prolong his life, Dr. Kong had no choice but to bite the bullet and eat it. He was almost suffocated to death by the smell of the dog poop. If he hadn't gritted his teeth and endured, he might have vomited it out. But this time, Dr. Kong was disappointed again. Not only was he disappointed, but he almost lost his life. After eating the dog poop, he started to vomit and have diarrhea, but there was no detoxification. After 2 to 3 days, Dr. Kong was almost dehydrated. When the Kong family saw that things couldn't go on like this, they quickly sent Old Man Kong to the hospital. After a checkup, it was confirmed that he had food poisoning. The doctor said that if he had come 2 days later, the old man would have died. The Kangs were puzzled at first. How could they be poisoned by eating dog poop? But when Dr. Kong woke up, his words woke them up. The name of the pill was the pill of life extension and toxin cleansing. Naturally, it was for detoxification. What he ate was the poison excreted by dogs. Wouldn't that make him food poisoning? The Kangs tried 13 different methods, and in the end, Dr. Kong almost lost his life. Dr. Kong called for a family meeting on his sickbed, listing this incident as House Kang's top secret. No one was to mention it in the future. There was no other reason than that it was too embarrassing. If this were to be exposed, House Kong would be done for. For now, they should just stick to Kong Ming's plan of hitting on girls. Starting with Guan Xian was the best option. If they could get the recipe for the pill of life extension and toxin cleansing, House Kong would be able to survive this crisis. Lin Yi looked at Pinliang's calm, yet hazy eyes. He had a vague feeling that there was something wrong with him, but he couldn't figure out what Pinliang was planning. Intuition told Lin Yi that Pinliang would definitely take revenge, but he didn't know if the target would be House Chu or Jiang Wen. On the way back to school, Lin Yi and Kong Xiaobo sat together. Kong Xiaobo didn't hide his joy at all. Pinliang, that little bastard, finally got his comeuppance. Let's see if he can still jump around after losing one of his kidneys. What's wrong with Tang Yin? Why didn't she come to school today? Do you have Xiaofen's phone number? Can you ask? Lin, he was worried about Tang Yin. He hadn't seen her for a few days, and he missed her. He didn't know why Tang Yin was avoiding him. Was there a misunderstanding? Oh, today, the slums are being demolished. They said that they're here to discuss the compensation. They want everyone to stay. Lu Xinwen took the day off, and Tang Yin should be at home. Kong Xiaobo said. I see. Linny nodded. Mrs. Tang had told him about this before, and he had also told them that after the demolition, he would pay some money for a retail house. Lin Yi was relieved after hearing Kong Xiaobo's reason. As long as Tang Yin was at home, nothing would happen. Boss, I need to tell you something. Yesterday, Zhou Ruoming's father came to my house. Kong Xiaobo told Lin Yi about what happened at the tea house, especially when Kong Xiaobo and Zhou Ruoming were scared when they heard Lin Yi's name. It made Kong Xiaobo very happy. Lin Yi only smiled faintly. Lin Yi didn't feel any sense of achievement to make these small people afraid of him. Only Kong Xiaobo would be this excited. Today was a big day in Shantytown because a development company was going to renovate the Shantytown. In fact, this was good news. The residents of Shantytown were looking forward to living in a building. Of course, they also wanted to get a lot of compensation. It wasn't that no development company had the idea of Shantytown before, but in the end, they gave up because the development cost was too high. The development company was responsible for the compensation and relocation of the relocated residents. However, Shantytown was different from the general old city reconstruction. Although the houses in Shantytown were dilapidated due to historical reasons, the area of each house was not small. In addition to the house, each house also had a bicycle shed, a warehouse, and a straw shed. These all had housing certificates. When the demolition was carried out, they also had to pay compensation according to the area. In this way, in addition to the house, each house had a shed or warehouse that was a few hundred meters wide. How much would it cost to demolish them? Even if they gave 3 to 5 houses, it wouldn't be enough. In such a situation, which development company dared to develop it? Wouldn't it be a losing business? However, there was no other way. Shantytown had historical reasons. It was originally a rural area and later changed into a town. It wasn't until the end of 2,000 years that it was connected to the city. Gradually, after more than 10 years of development, it became the main city area. In the past, when the cost of land was cheap, no development company was interested in this place. But later, the supporting facilities nearby were upgraded, and the housing prices rose. Now, this place couldn't afford to be demolished. Chapter 572. Kill one to warn others. Tang Juqing could already stand up and walk a few steps with the help of a crutch. However, there seemed to be some problem with the nerves in his left leg. It wasn't very sensitive, so he walked with a limp and stayed at home. Today was a big day in the slums. Other than Tang Juqing, the mother and daughter came to the only square in the slums, which used to be the garbage dump. Later on, the city started a garbage removal project and set up a few temporary garbage dumps in the slums. Only then did they completely remove the garbage dump. Otherwise, the smell would be unbearable in the summer. After it was cleaned up, it became a place for the elderly to play chess and exercise. It was also an empty space for the kids to play. Today, it became a place for negotiations with the developers. Behind the empty space between 2 trees, there was a sign. Welcome to Qibing Real Estate's renovation of the slums. Qibing sat in the back of the Audi Q7, and Zhong Fabai was the temporary driver. Jean Gubong sat in the front passenger seat, and beside Qibing was a middle-aged man. They couldn't tell who this middle-aged man was. He suddenly appeared next to Qibing early in the morning. Qibing didn't introduce him, and the middle-aged man didn't say much either. However, Fabai and Jean Gubong guessed that this man was Qibing's bodyguard. It was just that he wasn't here for the past few days. Behind the Audi Q7 was a black van with Zhong Fabai's underlings sitting in it. They were the thugs in charge of the negotiation. Their purpose was to teach those disobedient residents a lesson. The car stopped near the empty space, and Cheebing saw the sign on the square with one glance. He felt very satisfied. It seemed that these people had been waiting for their relocation for a long time, and now that he had the initiative, he would be able to lower the price a bit more for them. Master Bing, these people seem to welcome you very much, Fabai said flatteringly, but in his mind, he was planning to divert the trouble. Humph, let's see if they still welcome you when you tell them the price later. Master Bing wasn't stupid. He knew that these people didn't know the price he was going to give them. They wouldn't welcome him when he told them the price. So, what if they don't welcome me? They still have to demolish it. This is Master Bing's first project in Songshan. You can't let these unruly people ruin it. Zhong Fabai said, naturally, we won't stop because of them. However, if these unruly people don't allow us to demolish it, it will be troublesome. Zhao Qibing looked at the people in the square and frowned. It's obvious that these people have discussed this beforehand. I'm afraid that the negotiation won't go smoothly. This will depend on your determination. Master Bing, Fabai smiled. Since Tsihua Bro asked me to come here, I know what's going on. I do have some tricks up my sleeves, but Master Bing, you have to give me a limit. No matter how big the problem is, can I take responsibility? As long as we don't kill these people, we'll be fine, Master Bing said calmly. In Master Bing's eyes, the residents of the slums were like ants. He didn't believe that they could cause any trouble. With Master Bing here, things will be much easier. Fabai patted his chest and said, Master Bing, just watch. I'm the best at dealing with these unruly people. If it doesn't work, we'll just use the bulldozer and scare them to death. Yes, as long as they don't kill anyone, anything is fine. Master Bing nodded. But it's best if you kill one to warn the others. I'm afraid that I won't be able to suppress it if it causes too much of a commotion. But injuring or crippling one or two is still an accident. Right? Understood. Fabai nodded. Master Bing, let's see if there are any troublemakers later. It'll be easier after we get rid of them. That's what I meant, but old Zhong, don't you think you have too few people? Looking at the slums in the square, Zhao Qibing felt that Fabai's men might not be able to intimidate these people. Of course, he wasn't afraid himself, but he was afraid that something might happen. That's why he asked his father for this master, not to mention the hundreds of people in the square. Even if there were more, he would be fine. But it would be too much of a problem if he asked his bodyguards to deal with these people. Master Bing, these are just the workers who came with us. There's still the bulldozer and the trenching machine behind them. They'll be here soon. Fabai looked at his watch and said, They should be here soon. That's good. I'll leave it to you later. Zhao Qibing was relieved when he heard that Fabai still had men. Let's see who's not convinced later. We'll tear down their houses first. We should be more forceful from the start, or else these unruly people will take advantage of us. Fabai calculated in his heart. He'd tear down Tang Yun's house later, and it'd be best if they made a big commotion. If Tang Yun was hurt, Linny wouldn't just stand by and do nothing, right? When the time came, he would push all the blame away and let Linny take revenge on Master Bing. If he went against Master Bing, wouldn't he be seeking death? Master Bing nodded and got out of the car. Accompanied by Fabai, Jean Gubong, and the bodyguard, they came to a temporary rostrum in the square and sat down. The residents of the slums quietened down as well. They stared at the people on the rostrum without blinking. These were people who could decide their fates. Their words were like gold. How could they not be careful? This is the chairman of our Qibing Real Estate Development Company, Zhao Qibing, Director Zhao. He's in charge of this slums reconstruction. If you guys have any requests, you can tell us. We'll discuss the demolition plan. Fabai remembered Zhao Qibing's words. Kill one to warn 100. He had to find someone to establish his dominance. So he purposely said those words. He was waiting for someone who didn't care about their lives to ask for more. Then he'd teach them a lesson so that they wouldn't dare to ask for more. Fabai's words stunned the residents on the spot. Wasn't it always the developer who came and asked if they wanted to demolish the slums or not? Why was it a negotiation this time? Could it be that the developer this time had a conscience and was prepared to bring some benefits to the slums? So the residents started to think, but no one dared to step out first. After all, no one knew if the developer was telling the truth or not. Chapter 573. Kill one to warn others. They came to the slums early in the morning. Master Bing hadn't eaten yet, and his stomach was growling. Fabai was attentive and stood beside Master Bing, so he heard the growling and found a chance to get on Master Bing's good side. Master Bing was hungry as well, so he nodded. Let's eat something first, then. The slums residents, who had been waiting for a long time, were dumbfounded. Why did these big bosses just come and leave like that? They were waiting to talk about the price, and now they were going to eat? What was the meaning of this? But they didn't dare to ask. They watched as Master Bing and the others left. Chi Bing and the others were about to get into the car to eat when he heard someone call his name. Master Bing. Master Bing, wait for me. Chi Bing turned around and froze. He recognized the person immediately. You're Li Erlin, right? It's me. It's me. Erlin was overjoyed. He didn't think that Master Bing would still recognize him after all this time. Master Bing, I've missed you so much. Don't you know that I've lost my purpose in life after you left? I can't live without Boss. I feel so empty. Chi Bing had spent a few days in Songshan during middle school, so he got to know the tyrant of the school, Li Erlin. Chi Bing was rich, and he had bodyguards at school. Erlin wasn't an idiot who only knew how to fight. He could tell that Chi Bing's family wasn't ordinary, and he could get some benefits from Chi Bing. And so he volunteered to be Chi Bing's follower. Chi Bing had bodyguards that wanted to send him to school, but bodyguards couldn't go to school. Having a follower in school was a great thing, and so Chi Bing was very happy that Erlin had joined him. He didn't mistreat him, and Erlin got quite a lot of benefits from Chi Bing as well. Who would have thought that Chi Bing wouldn't even stay for 2 months before transferring schools? Li Erlin was quite troubled. He'd thought that he'd be the young master's follower for a long time, and that he'd be able to find a better future in the future. But the young master had already transferred schools. Chi Bing had the ability to transfer schools, but Erlin didn't. He could only stay in his old school obediently. But Zhao Chi Bing was quite comfortable using Erlin, so he didn't mind Erlin calling him after he left. Chi Bing had contacted Li Erlin before coming back to Songshan, but this was the first time they'd met, and Li Erlin looked a little different than before. Oh, let's go get something to eat. Chi Bing nodded and introduced Li Erlin to Fabai. And the others, this is Li Erlin, my follower from Songshan. He lives in the slums too. You can ask him about the demolition. Fabai looked down on Li Erlin before, but when he heard that he was Zhao Chi Bing's follower, he immediately became respectful. After all, he wasn't Zhao Chi Bing's follower yet. He was only working for Zhao Chi Bing now, not the core of the organization. Gubong, on the other hand, was secretly astonished as well. How was this inconspicuous gangster Master Bing's lackey? But he didn't dare ask. Chi Bing found a restaurant. He didn't have much interest in food, but he was interested in women and money. Let's go here. Erlin, go ask if there's a private room. All right. Erlin was a gangster in this area, and naturally, he knew the owner of the restaurant. After entering, he called out to the waiter, "Get your boss out here." The waiter knew Erlin, too, and knew that he was a gangster. He didn't dare offend him, so he quickly nodded and called the boss over. The boss frowned when he saw Erlin. "Erlin, didn't I give you pocket money this month? Why are you here again?" The boss wasn't afraid of Erlin, but it was better to give a gangster, like him, some benefits every month. It would be troublesome if they caused trouble. "What do you mean again?" "I'm here to have a meal. I'm looking up to you. My boss is here. Prepare a private room." Erlin glared at the boss impatiently. My boss is Chairman Zhao from Qibing Real Estate. He's from the capital. The boss, on the other hand, had heard that Qibing Real Estate was in charge of renovating the slums nearby. He paused, wondering when did this Erlin get to know such a powerful boss. He didn't dare to delay and put on a smile. Erlin, it seems like you're going to make a fortune in the future. Don't forget about us after you become a boss. Of course. All right, stop talking and get a private room. Li Erlin was very pleased with the boss's words. He was also thinking that since Master Bing had come here to start a company as his former follower, could he also get a job for himself and let him be the boss of a company? The boss personally sent Master Bing and the others to the private room. He didn't know Master Bing, but he had seen Zhong Fabai before. Which restaurant owner didn't know Zhong Fabai? Seeing how respectful Zhong Fabai was to the young man, the boss knew that Master Bing wasn't someone to be trifled with. Soon, the dishes were placed on the table. Zhao Qibing ate some and asked, Erlin, I told you that I'm going to develop the slums. Did you ask around? What's the situation like now? The relocated households have already discussed it. They want 3,000 yuan per square meter as compensation. Li Erlin said, they're asking for too much. That's bullsh asterisk T. 3,000? Zhao Qibing laughed coldly. The price of a house here is only 10,000, and they want 3,000? That's right. If it were up to me, they'd be asking for more than 1,000. Erlin said, Master Bing, I've asked around. There's no one with a powerful background in the slums. They're all small fries. Just do whatever you want. It'll be fine. That's good. Zhao Qibing nodded and turned to Fabai. If that's the case, demolish a few houses for me today. Demolish the house of the troublemaker first. Let's see if they'll still dare to be cocky after that. Don't worry, Master Bing. The bulldozer and trenching machine are already in place. We can start any time. Fabai nodded. Chapter 574. Chapter 574. Oh, how pretty is she? Master Bing's eyes lit up, but he maintained a calm expression. He had passed the age where he couldn't move when he saw a woman. Although he was lustful, he had good taste. He had played with many women over the years, and some of them were exquisite. But the more he did it, the more Master Bing developed aesthetic fatigue. Now he was only interested in girls, especially virgins. That was his favorite. Tang Yun, have you heard of her? She's the prettiest girl in Songshan's first high school and the #1 beauty in the slums. Erlin said, I have a photo here. Master Bing, can you take a look? Oh, let me see. Master Bing took Erlin's phone. It was filled with photos of Tang Yun that Erlin had secretly taken. Fabai was overjoyed. He was just thinking about how to shift the blame to Tang Yun when Erlin appeared. It was perfect timing. Now he had a reason to mess with Tang Yun's family. Master Bing, I've heard of this Tang Yun before. My son is also studying in Songshan's first high school. There's a commoner school beauty called Tang Yun. Fabai interrupted. But I heard that she got a boyfriend recently? Just got a boyfriend? Not in the past. Master Bing's eyes lit up. It was very likely that the girl was a virgin. He looked at the photos on Erlin's phone. They were the best of the best. If the photos were already so pretty, how beautiful would the real person be? He was most interested in this type of woman. Not in the past, Master Bing. I'm sure that Tang Yun is still a virgin. Erlin said, I've done some research on this. Women who have lost their virginity before can tell. Zhao Qibing nodded. Old Zhong, think of a way to deal with Tang Yun's family. This girl is mine. Don't worry, Master Bing. I'll take care of it. Zhong Fabai's heart was filled with joy. God is helping me. This Li Erlin is such a wonderful person. I heard that Tang Yun's family wants to build a storefront after the demolition. We can use this as a bargaining chip. Li Erlin had already asked around about Tang Yun's family. He was from the slums after all, so it wasn't hard for him to find out. Zhong Fabai nodded. He was even more grateful to Li Erlin. This time, he even had a reason to make things difficult for him. He didn't have to think about it anymore. After the meal, they returned to the square of Shantytown. However, there was one more person on the podium. It was Lee Erlin. The residents of Shantytown were somewhat inexplicable. Why did these big bosses come and leave, and then come back? What kind of play was this? Seeing Lee Erlin on the rostrum, the residents of Shantytown were annoyed. Lee Erlin must have colluded with the enemy and told the developers about the residents' opinions. Because Lee Erlin was also a member of Shantytown, they did not hide it from him during the meeting, so he knew more about it. Now, it seemed that it was a mistake. This brat was indeed a bad seed. He actually became a spy. Have you finished discussing? If you haven't, then let me talk about the compensation rules of cheaping real estate. Fabai cleared his throat and looked at the crowd. The compensation for every square meter is 800. After the house is built, we can give the returning residents a discount. The returning residents can enjoy a 20% discount, but the storefront and the garage are excluded. 800? The residents of Shantytown were unhappy and started to clamor. How high are the housing prices now? How are we supposed to buy a house with 800? The housing prices here are already 10,000, and it's still 8,000 after a 20% discount. We will calculate the size of the sheds and the warehouse. Adding all of these together, it shouldn't be a problem for your family to buy a small house of 30 to 40 square meters. Fabai said indifferently, "Okay, if there are no more problems, let's sign the agreement." Everyone was a little dumbfounded. The amount of compensation they agreed on was 3,000, but the bottom line was 2,000. With such a sum of money, they could buy a decent big house elsewhere. However, they didn't expect the developer to only give 800. Wasn't the difference a little too big? The most disappointed person was Mrs. Tang. Her house was small, and she didn't have a warehouse or shed. She just wanted to buy a storefront and start a barbecue business with the money that Linny gave her. But the returning residents didn't get a discount when buying a storefront. What kind of logic was this? We're not going to demolish it. What kind of compensation is this? If we demolish it, we won't have a place to live. Don't you guys agree? Someone started to clamor. Since someone had started it, there were more people who were dissatisfied. They all expressed their disagreement. This kind of compensation was too little. 3,000. Not 1 cent less. We won't move if it's less. You guys can build wherever you want. Lee Erlin, are you colluding with them? You traitor. How dare you betray us, Shantytown? We're all on the first floor. Why don't we get a discount when buying a storefront? If that's the case, then we might as well not move. Mrs. Tang couldn't help but ask. She didn't have much of an opinion on the compensation. Even if they gave 2,000, it wouldn't be more than 10,000. Mrs. Tang didn't want to speak up at first. After all, it wasn't suitable for a woman to speak up in a situation like this. But since everyone started to speak up, she didn't care anymore. However, Zhong Fabai pointed at her the moment she opened her mouth. You want a storefront? Then come over here. Mrs. Tang blinked. She didn't hear anything from Zhong Fabai's tone. Could it be that he wanted to give her a discount? Mrs. Tang was tempted and wanted to walk over. Tang Yun was a little scared. Mom, don't go. The bird that sticks out gets shot. Silly child, can't you see that everyone is making a fuss? If you don't fight for the benefits now, when are you going to fight for it? Mrs. Tang glared at her daughter. There's strength in numbers. Don't you understand? You still want to talk to them in private? Don't forget about your father's matter. We can't solve anything by ourselves. Now that we have more people, we can raise some conditions together. They will definitely solve it. Then, I'll go with you. Tang Yun was still worried. After all, she had seen how evil the bad guys could be. Tang Yun walked with Mrs. Tang. Zhong Fabai's eyes lit up when he saw Tang Yun. This Lin Yi had good taste. This girl was quite pretty. What a pity. Chapter 575. Chapter 575. How's Tang's tragedy? You want a retail store, right? Master Bing has the final say on this. Why don't you talk to him? Fabai purposely pushed Mrs. Tang toward Zhao Qibing. Master Bing, what do you think? We want a storefront. Is it possible? Mrs. Tang looked at Zhao Qibing worriedly. Qibing was obviously the one in charge, and he looked a little gloomy. Mrs. Tang didn't dare to look at him. Retail store. Master Bing didn't look at Mrs. Tang, but looked at Tang Yun with a lecherous gaze. I can give you the retail store. It's up to you. What? How? Mrs. Tang was taken aback. She didn't expect Master Bing to say this. Not only could he give her a retail store, he could even give her the retail store for free. What kind of logic was this? Was there such a good person in the world? It wasn't possible. This is your daughter, right? Zhao Qibing looked at Tang Yun with a lecherous gaze. I need a female secretary here. Let her follow me. Let's not talk about one retail store. I can even give you two. Mrs. Tang was taken aback. She understood what Zhao Qibing meant. He had his eyes on her daughter. But was it worth it to trade her daughter for a retail store? Lin Yi didn't want his daughter anymore. It wouldn't be bad if his daughter followed Zhao Qibing. But would his words count? Tang Yun looked at her mother angrily. It was obvious that Zhao Qibing's conditions had moved her mother, but how could Tang Yun like Zhao Qibing? How could she agree to his conditions? Tang Yun pulled her mother's hand. Mom, let's go back. We don't want the retail store anymore. Mrs. Tang knew her daughter's personality. If it was someone she didn't like, she would never agree. She was as stubborn as a cow. It was useless to force her. The thing with Lin Yi was that she liked Lin Yi. But this Zhao Qibing was obviously playing around with her. If he really wanted Tang Yun to be his girlfriend, he wouldn't have made her his secretary. Let's go. Tang Yun turned around. She hated Zhao Qibing. Go. You can come and go as you please. Li Erlin suddenly jumped out and stood in front of the mother and daughter. I say, Tang Yun, it's your fortune that Master Bing has his eyes on you. Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. You'll lose everything if you cause a ruckus. Li Erlin, you traitor, get out of my way. Tang Yun held her head high. This Zhao Qibing obviously didn't have good intentions. How could she continue talking to them? Although Lin Yi didn't want him, he couldn't humiliate himself, right? Become someone's toy? She would rather be Lin Yi's mistress. Tang Yun, right? I'm not afraid to tell you that there's no woman I can't get my hands on. If you know what's good for you and follow me, then you'll have a good life. Your family will have a store and a house. But if you don't follow me, then you'll have to bear the consequences. Zhao Qibing laughed coldly and made a bold statement. In front of so many people, Tang Yun rejected him like this. It made him lose face. In the provincial capital, as long as Master Bing beckoned with his finger, many beauties would throw themselves into his arms. He thought that if Tang Yun promised her some benefits, she would obediently follow him. He didn't expect her to have such a personality. We don't want the store anymore, and we won't demolish the house. We'll live in the old house, okay? What else can you do? Tang Yun's personality was like this. She would rather give up the house than let others bully her. Not demolishing the house? That's not up to you. Zhao Qibing wanted to make an example out of Tang Yun. He couldn't find a target yet, so he decided to use Tang Yun's house as an example. He looked at Zhong Fabai. Fabai nodded and stood up, walking out of the square with Li Erlin. Mrs. Tang looked at her daughter helplessly. With this, the negotiation had come to an impasse. It was impossible to back out now. She didn't want the store anymore. She pulled her daughter and wanted to walk back. Did I say you could leave? Jean Gubong said coldly. Zhong Fabai and Li Erlin were gone, so it was his turn to speak. Can't we leave if we don't demolish the house? Tang Yun glared at Jean Gubong. Let them go. They'll regret it later, Zhao Qibing said faintly, but his tone was firm. He could already hear the sound of the bulldozer and trenching machine. Tang Yun and her daughter were confused. Why would they regret it later? But since they could go back now, they didn't want to stay here any longer. Mrs. Tang pulled Tang Yun home. She wanted to go back and discuss with Tang Yun. They couldn't just let it go like this, could they? What would they do if they gave up the store? Their dream of opening a barbecue shop was shattered. The two of them were near their house when they saw a trenching machine extending its arm, smashing towards their house. The bulldozers behind them roared as they pushed into the Tang family's courtyard, flattening all the fences in front of the door. Dad, old Tang Yun and her mother screamed at the same time and ran back to their house. They didn't expect Zhao Qibing to send people to demolish their house, but Tang Jucheng was still in the house. What should they do? Tang Yun ignored the danger and rushed into the house while Mrs. Tang went to stop the excavator from demolishing the house. At this moment, the beams were all destroyed. They didn't know if Tang Jucheng was injured or not. He wouldn't be able to get out without help. What are you doing? My dad is still inside. Stop! Tang Yun yelled at the driver as she ran. However, Li Erlin, who was sitting next to the trenching machine driver, had a fierce look in his eyes. He said to the trenching machine driver, "Continue to dismantle it." "She is lying." Master Bing said that he will take responsibility if anything happens. The driver nodded and continued to operate the machine. Tang Yun saw that they weren't listening and could only rush into the house. But could she still enter the house? The bulldozer was blocking the front door and pushing forward. It was obvious that they wanted to cooperate with the trenching machine and destroy the house. Chapter 576. Her face, someone's dead. Someone's dead. Mrs. Tang saw that her daughter was smashed and rushed over like a madwoman. She didn't know how her husband was doing, and now her daughter was smashed. What should she do? The trencher and bulldozer drivers were dumbfounded and didn't dare to continue. After all, they were hired by Zhong Fabai. Zhong Fabai and Master Bing could handle the demolition, but if someone was killed, they wouldn't be able to get away with it. Zhong Fabai froze as well. He didn't think that Tang Yun would be so bold as to rush into the house. Did she want to die? Qibing, Jin Gubang, and the bodyguards were here to watch the commotion, but Mrs. Tang's scream of "someone's dead" shocked them as well. Zhao Qibing frowned when he saw the disfigured Tang Yun lying in a pool of blood. He cursed in his heart. Such a beautiful girl was killed just like that. Even if she wasn't dead, she wasn't pretty anymore. What a pity. Let's go. We'll come back in a few days. Seeing that someone was injured, Zhao Qibing knew that he couldn't continue the discussion today. However, he had achieved his goal of killing one as a warning to the others. After today's scene, these people wouldn't be able to ask for an exorbitant price the next time they came to discuss the issue of relocation. Don't go! Everyone, hurry up and stop them. We don't know what happened to Yin. They can't leave, they're murderers. Mrs. Tang saw that Zhao Qibing and the others were trying to escape and panicked. However, Zhao Qibing and the others got on the bulldozer and continued driving forward. The residents of the slums wanted to stop them, but no one dared to step forward. After all, these people dared to demolish people's houses. They wouldn't be afraid of being crushed to death. Zhao Qibing shouted when he saw that there were people who were eager to try. Go ahead, if you're not afraid of death. Don't worry about these people. We'll crush them to death. Zhao Qibing's domineering attitude made the people who wanted to make a move stop. After all, everyone was afraid of death, especially someone like Zhao Qibing who wasn't afraid of death, who would dare to provoke him. And so, Qibing's group left the slums very quickly, leaving only Mrs. Tang hugging Tang Yun and crying her heart out. The door was broken and they couldn't get in. They didn't know if old Tang was all right or not. Someone had already called the police and the ambulance, but it was the fire truck that came first. The firefighters broke down the half-demolished house and rescued Jucheng. Mrs. Tang breathed a sigh of relief when she saw that only Tang Jucheng's legs were broken. Tang Jucheng could still speak when he was carried out, but He was grimacing in pain and sweating profusely. Mrs. Tang couldn't be bothered to comfort him. She just hugged her daughter and waited for the ambulance. Then the ambulance and police car arrived. Mrs. Tang quickly carried her daughter into the ambulance, and Tang Jucheng was also carried into the other ambulance. The two ambulances sped towards the hospital. After the group left, Qibing gave the bulldozer and trench digger a sum of money and told them to leave first. The two were scared and ran after taking the money. Qibing, on the other hand, wasn't scared at all. If anything happened, he could just push the blame onto the two drivers. Uncle Zhu, follow them and create an accident. Kill them, Qibing whispered to the middle-aged bodyguard beside him after the two drivers left. Yes, Master Bing, the middle-aged man called Uncle Zhu, didn't say anything else. He turned around and chased after the two drivers. Naturally, Qibing wouldn't allow the evidence to point at him after someone died. The only way was to eliminate the source of the trouble. After all, he didn't know if anyone died or not. Qibing had asked Uncle Zhu to kill a lot of people already, so he didn't feel guilty at all. He laughed and rushed back to Qibing Skyscraper with Erlin, Fabai, and Jean Gubong. Qibing Skyscraper was the headquarters of Qibing Real Estate built by Gubong and Siwa a while ago. It was officially completed today. Qibing, on the other hand, was holding a completion ceremony for Qibing Skyscraper tonight. He invited some of the famous people in Songshan to the banquet hall in front of Qibing Skyscraper. This banquet hall would become a restaurant after the completion of Qibing Skyscraper. It was also the cafeteria for the employees of Qibing Skyscraper. Tang Yun and Tang Jucheng were sent to the hospital. When they arrived, Tang Yun was already awake. Mrs. Tang breathed a sigh of relief. After the medical staff's examination, Tang Yun only had a cut on her forehead. There were no other problems, but the wound on her forehead needed stitches, and it would leave a scar. It was impossible for her to be as beautiful as before. It was already good enough that she didn't scare people when she went out. Tang Jucheng, on the other hand, had both of his legs broken. He was put on a cast after being sent to the hospital. He was fine except for the fact that he could stand up just now. Now, he had to lie on the bed again. In fact, Tang Yun and Tang Jucheng were fine. But after Mrs. Tang breathed a sigh of relief, she started to worry again. Her house was forcefully demolished. She didn't even have a home in the future. What should she do? Now that her daughter's face was disfigured, she didn't even have the capital to bargain with Zhao Qibing. Would he still like her? So Mrs. Tang was worried. She was hoping that her daughter could find a rich man with her face, but now she had nothing. Mrs. Tang, on the other hand, had never thought of asking Zhao Qibing for medical fees. The memory of how hard it was for Tang Jucheng was still fresh in her mind. She didn't expect Zhao Qibing to compensate them at all. Tang Yun's head was covered with bandages. She stared blankly at the ceiling of the hospital. Wouldn't she be pretty in the future? Was she going to become an ugly monster? Although Tang Yun did get angry when she met bad guys who were drooling over her beauty. She wanted to become ugly so that she wouldn't be harassed. But women were born to love beauty. She didn't want to become ugly, did she? Would Lin still like her? Tang Yun thought about how Lin Yi didn't want her anymore. Tears started to flow down her face. At first, she still had the capital to compete with Xiao Xiao. But now that her face was disfigured, Lin Yi probably wouldn't want her anymore, right? Don't be sad. The doctor said that if you recover well, there won't be a big scar left. Mrs. Tang didn't know when she walked into the room. Seeing her daughter crying silently, Mrs. Tang's heart broke. Mom. Tang Yun couldn't hold back her emotions anymore. She started crying. Mom, why is our family so unlucky? Why did they demolish our house? Why? Chapter 577. What to do in the future, you're right. The bird that pokes its head out gets shot. But Mom, I shouldn't have tried to take advantage of them and asked for a store. Now that I think about it, they just wanted to make an example out of me. We just happened to bump into each other. Mrs. Tang continued. Tang Yun felt wronged. Half of it was because she was bullied, and the other half was because she was abandoned by Lin Yi. It seemed like the ugly duckling was destined to never become a swan. She thought that she had found a good boyfriend, but in the end, he just wanted to play with her. After hearing Zhao Qibing's words, Tang Yun suddenly understood. Girls from poor families like her were just playthings in the eyes of those rich young masters. How could they be sincere? She was naive enough to think that Lin Yi would treat her well for the rest of his life. While the mother and daughter were worrying, a doctor in a white coat walked in and looked at Mrs. Tang. You're Tang Juqing and Tang Yun's family, right? You should pay for the surgery and hospital fees. The 10,000 yuan deposit isn't enough. Ah, not enough? Mrs. Tang didn't know what to do. This 10,000 yuan was borrowed from the slums. Her house was torn down, and Lin Yi's card was nowhere to be found. How was she going to pay for the medical fees? Yes, please pay as soon as possible. You need to pay at least 20,000 yuan. The doctor placed the receipt on the table in front of Mrs. Tang and walked out. Mrs. Tang looked at the receipt in front of her and didn't know what to do. Mom, do you have no money? Where's the money? Tang Yun saw her mother's expression and temporarily suppressed the grievances in her heart. I didn't bring the card and passbook with me. I don't know if I can find them. This 10,000 yuan is borrowed from Lu Xinwen's family. It's not enough. Mrs. Tang sighed. Now that our house is gone and you and your dad are injured, how are we going to survive? No matter how hard their family had been in the past, they were never at a dead end. But now, they were at a dead end. Their house was gone, and they had no money. The card was in Lin Yi's name, and they couldn't report it. What would they do in the future? Mrs. Tang was worried when Lu Xinwen pushed the door open and ran in. She shouted, "In Yun, how are you? How are you? You scared me to death." Lu Xinwen couldn't follow the ambulance, so she had to come here by herself. That was why she had only just arrived at the hospital. I'm fine. Tang Yun smiled bitterly and rubbed her eyes. She didn't want Xinwen to see her crying. But Lu Xinwen wasn't blind. How could she not see the tear stains in Tang Yun's eyes? Yun, are you crying? Lu Xinwen exclaimed. What's wrong? What's the matter? Isn't the doctor fine now? Xinwen, I'm disfigured. Tang Yun couldn't hold it in anymore. She'd had enough. She wanted to cry now. She wouldn't be a pretty girl anymore. Compared to his father's broken leg, the consequences of Tang Yun's actions were much more serious. Tang Juqing only had a fracture. It was nothing serious. As long as he recovered, he would be fine. But Tang Yun's face was disfigured. How could she accept it? Ah, her face was disfigured? Xinwen was also shocked. Tang Yun was the prettiest of the sisters. How could she be disfigured? 8 stitches on her forehead. Mrs. Tang smiled bitterly. Her home is gone, and her father's leg is broken. He still owes you money, and the hospital is asking for medical fees. How are we going to live like this? Did you tell Linny? Lu Xinwen asked suddenly. Why would I look for him? Tang Yun felt wronged, and almost cried again. Let Lin Yi see how pitiful she was. How could she? If Xiao Xiao came, she'd laugh at her and be happy that her face was disfigured. How could you not look for him when something like this happened? You idiot, hurry up and call him. Lu Xinwen was panicking. He doesn't want me anymore. Why would I look for him? Why would I rely on him? Tang Yun cried again. She was sad and wronged. I have to say, kid, they say that a day together means 100 days of love. I think he likes you. Why don't you try calling him? Our family is already like this. How are we going to live if we don't look for him? Mrs. Tang hesitated. Even if we don't want anything else, we should at least pay up that 500,000 yuan card, right? Like me? Like what? I'm disfigured. I don't even want to be his mistress anymore. How am I supposed to call him? Embarrass me? Tang Yun felt wronged. She didn't think that her mother would still be concerned about the breakup fee. Tang Yun felt wronged. His reaction was also intense. He straightened his neck and said angrily, "He used to like you. Why don't you try?" Mrs. Tang didn't want to give up. She was an adult. She had to think more. She couldn't just give up that 500,000 yuan. What would happen to the family if she gave it up? What do I have to try? What do I have to do? I owe him so much money. We didn't even do anything. How am I supposed to ask him? How am I supposed to pay him back? Tang Yun was panicking. Why don't you ask his girlfriend to be his mistress? Didn't his girlfriend agree? Mrs. Tang said after some hesitation, "I don't want to. Mom, what kind of idea is this? I'm going to die if you say anything else. How can you embarrass me like that? I'm disfigured. Why would he agree to be his mistress? How am I supposed to live? How could Tang Yun agree? Wasn't she asking her to embarrass herself? Why are you so stubborn? You're playing with Zhao Qibing, and you're playing with Lin Yi. What's wrong with being a mistress? We don't even have a house. If you don't call us, we'll just wait for death." Mrs. Tang wasn't being unreasonable. This family was at their wits' end. What should she do? Mrs. Tang wanted her daughter to seduce Zhao Qibing. Giving them 2 stores and a house wasn't a bad idea. The problem was that her daughter was disfigured. Zhao Qibing wouldn't even want her. So Mrs. Tang turned her attention to Lin Yi. She thought that Lin Yi was in a relationship with her daughter. He had to care about her feelings, right? Even if her daughter was disfigured, he couldn't just ignore it, could he? Mrs. Tang couldn't be blamed for thinking that way. She was too poor. She was afraid of being bullied. When Lin Yi was around, Mrs. Tang was in the limelight. Even the people at the food street didn't dare to bully her. It gave her a sense of satisfaction. But after Lin Yi left, her family was bullied. Their house was torn down, their man's leg was broken, and their daughter's face was disfigured. They didn't even dare to reason with them. Mrs. Tang didn't want that. She wanted to live a rich and powerful life. Chapter 578. Chapter 578. Tang Yin's complicated thoughts who knew that her daughter would be disfigured. Mrs. Tang wanted her daughter to give it a try. At least it would give her hope. Then you're forcing me? I didn't beg him when I looked good. Now that I'm disfigured, how can I beg him? You want me to beg him to be his mistress? I'm not that shameless. I can't do it. With Tang Yin's personality, how could she do something like that? If it was before, Tang Yin would grit her teeth and reluctantly accept her mother forcing her to be a mistress. After all, she couldn't let go of this relationship. If Lin Yi apologized to her, Tang Yin's heart might really soften. But now that she was disfigured, wouldn't it be embarrassing to beg him to be a mistress? What would Lin Yi think of her? Tang Yin didn't want it. Mrs. Tang couldn't help but fall silent after hearing Tang Yin's words. She was indeed powerful. Although she was vain, Tang Yin was still her daughter. Hence, when Master Bing had his eyes on Tang Yin, she let Tang Yin choose herself. Since Tang Yin rejected, she naturally wouldn't force it. Lin Yi, on the other hand, was different. Mrs. Tang naturally could tell that her daughter liked Lin Yi. As far as she was concerned, it was only right for her daughter to go find Lin Yi. After all, her daughter had feelings for Lin Yi, even if she wasn't worthy of Lin Yi and couldn't compare to Lin Yi's current girlfriend's family background. Her daughter was still pretty, right? Being a mistress was a bit unfair, but if her daughter was willing, Mrs. Tang naturally wouldn't say anything. There weren't many situations where you could have both love and bread. She had suffered for most of her life, pursuing an illusory love. She had seen too much of the fickleness of the world and the fickleness of human nature. She didn't want her daughter to walk the same path. Looking at the classmates of her age, some of them looked like they were in their 30s. Mrs. Tang secretly envied them. Back then, She was the school belle. Boys fought over her. But now, no one even talked to her during class gatherings. Mrs. Tang knew that this was the end of her life. It was her own choice to marry old Tang. After she had Tang Yun, it was impossible for her to get a divorce. Moreover, she had feelings for Tang Jucheng. Tang Yin, on the other hand, was different. Her daughter was only 18, the prime of her youth. If she could find a rich man she liked, then she'd have a bright future ahead of her. Otherwise, how would she be able to live a good life with her own efforts? It was true that there were people who changed their lives with their own efforts, but there were still many girls from poor families who couldn't find a job after graduation or couldn't find a good job. They were tempted by all kinds of society and walked on the evil path. If they were not prostitutes, they would become someone else's mistress. Otherwise, they would sleep with their superiors and clients for the sake of promotion and money. These were not uncommon. Mrs. Tang felt that her daughter wouldn't be at a disadvantage if she followed Lin Yi. This was also why she kept asking Tang Yun to find Lin Yi. However, she had calmed down now. Her daughter was right. She was already disfigured. Would Lin Yi still care about her? If he were to be rejected, how embarrassing would that be? With her daughter's unyielding personality, she'd probably kill herself. With that thought, Mrs. Tang didn't dare to force her daughter anymore. How about I go make the call? I'll go all out. I've been treated with a lot of disdain in my life anyways. Worst comes to worst, I'll just get insulted by Lin. Mom, don't call. Tang Yun's heart trembled slightly when she heard her mother's words. Her resentment towards her mother disappeared in an instant. Her mother still loved her. Yes, her mother had suffered for most of her life. She planned this for her own sake. She didn't want her to live a poor life in the future. Although her mother's actions were a bit extreme, Tang Yun understood her mother at this moment. Yes, just a moment ago, Tang Yun watched as the bulldozer pushed into her yard and the trenching machine collapsed the roof of her house. At that moment, Tang Yun felt so helpless, so helpless. She wanted to fight against fate, but she couldn't. Tang Yun was powerless in front of a strong and evil person. She understood her mother now. She knew why her mother was so snobbish. This was reality. How could her mother not be snobbish? If she believed that Lin Yi was still her boyfriend, would he just sit and watch his house get destroyed? So Guoming wanted to do something to her. And after being taught a lesson by Lin Yi, the Zhou family was as scared as a grandson in front of her. He was one of the most powerful tycoons in Songshan. They didn't even dare to breathe in front of her. I have no choice. I don't want to see you suffer. Mrs. Tang sighed. Mom. Tang Yun cried. She cried so miserably. I know you're doing this for me, but I don't want to be so spineless. If Lin Yi doesn't want me, how can we go to him? If I didn't become like this, it'd be fine. If I owe too much, I'll find a way to pay it back. If I can't pay it back, I'll pay it back with my body. Mrs. Tang and Lu Xinwen's hearts ached as they looked at Tang Yun, but they still helped her. Annie, why don't I talk to Lin Yi? I'm just a bystander. I don't care if I lose face or not. It's not a big deal if he rejects me. Xinwen thought about it. It was more appropriate for her to make this call. That's great. Xinwen, I'll be troubling you. Mrs. Tang was happy that Xinwen was willing to make the call. It might not be effective, but it was better than nothing. Lin Yi couldn't just ignore his daughter's relationship with him. Right? Tang Yun bit her lips. She wanted to stop him, but she sighed. If she didn't talk to Lin Yi, she wouldn't know who else to talk to in just a few short minutes. Tang Yun's mind was made up. Her house was gone, her father's leg was broken, and she was disfigured. Her family was in a terrible state. To use a more popular saying, could it be any more miserable? In fact, Tang Yun also wanted to see if Lin Yi cared about her. Tang Yun was looking forward to it. A girl's heart was always hard to understand, especially a girl in love. Xinwen picked up the phone and dialed a familiar number. Tang Yin's heart tensed up and her breathing became labored. Wait, what's wrong, Yinyin? Xinwen put down the phone and looked at Tang Yun strangely. Yinyin, you should have asked him to come. Chapter 579. Shu, the spy Xinwen didn't want to talk about Tang Yin's disfigurement. At first, she wanted Lin Yi to come first, but since Tang Yin asked, Xinwen could only comply. She understood that Tang Yin wanted to see if Lin Yi's feelings for her were real. If Lin Yi really loved Tang Yin, then even if Tang Yin wasn't pretty, Lin Yi wouldn't just ignore it. But if Lin Yi only wanted Tang Yin's beauty, then Lin Yi might just ignore it. Mrs. Tang knew what her daughter was thinking. She couldn't help but sigh. It seemed that whether or not Lin Yi would be able to control her daughter, it was up to fate. Xinwen saw that Tang Yin was determined and couldn't reject it. She picked up her phone again and called Lin Yi's number. The last class in the afternoon was a self-study class. Meng Yao was focused on her revision materials when Yushu whispered, "Yao Yao sis, I have good news and bad news for you. Which one do you want to hear first?" "Whatever," Meng Yao said faintly. "Yao Yao sis, why are you so calm?" Yushu saw that Meng Yao didn't seem to be interested and was a little disappointed. "Your good news and bad news are basically the same. It doesn't matter which one I hear." Meng Yao had gotten to know Yushu very well after all these years, and she knew that Yushu's good news and bad news were all normal news, just a little exaggerated. Meng Yao had been lying to her a few times before, but now she was calm. "This news is different. It's about Shield Bro." Yushu whispered mysteriously. "Oh?" Meng Yao raised her eyebrows subtly and said faintly, "What about Lin Yi? What good news does he have?" He. Yushu smiled when she saw that Meng Yao was interested. "The good news is that I heard that Lin Yi and Tang Yin broke up. Yao Yao sis, you have a chance." Meng Yao was speechless, but in her heart she was happy. Was she happy? Meng Yao didn't know what to say. "What kind of good news is this? If there's a chance, it should be you. You've kissed him before, and he's even seen you naked." "I want to, but if the main wife doesn't do it, the second wife can't do it either." Yushu said nonchalantly, "You've kissed me before, indirectly. Let's not talk about this." Meng Yao didn't want to talk about it, but the feeling of disgust was gone. Thinking back to how strong her reaction was, Meng Yao felt sweet instead. "Then what's the bad news?" "That Xiao Xiao seems to be Shield Bro's new girlfriend," Yushu said. "How do you know? Where did you get this information?" "How come I didn't know about it?" Meng Yao asked curiously. "Don't forget, I'm the spy, Shu 007. Yushu said proudly. "I knew it as soon as I asked around." Meng Yao couldn't help but smile. "Spy Shu? Shu, the B asterisk starred, right? Looking at your face, do you like Lin Yi?" "Why would I like him? It's Yao Yao sis who likes him, and as the second wife, I can only train myself to like him." Yushu said. "Let's read." Meng Yao glanced at Yushu before turning back to the materials in front of her, but she didn't flip a single page. For a long time, Yushu, on the other hand, took out a workbook and started flipping through it quickly, writing and drawing on it from time to time. Meng Yao frowned. Her best friend's mentality wasn't something normal people could understand. Lin Yi was planning to skip the evening class and go to Tang Yun's house when the phone in his pocket vibrated. He took it out and saw that it was Xinwen. "Hello." Lin Yi picked up. "Lin Yi, it's Xinwen." Xinwen took a deep breath, her tone unfriendly. Although Tang Yun was looking at her, Xinwen couldn't control her emotions. After all, Tang Yun was her good friend. So no matter how powerful this heartless Lin Yi was, she had to stand up for Tang Yun. Xinwen's personality was like that. If it weren't for Master Bing's group running fast, Xinwen would have grabbed a cleaver and started chopping them. Her reckless and impulsive personality was also very loyal to her friends. "Xinwen, what's the matter?" Lin Yi blinked, not understanding why Xinwen was looking for him at this time. Tang Yun is in trouble at Songshan's First People's Hospital. Her forehead is injured, and she needs 8 stitches. If I'm not mistaken, her face is disfigured. Shinwen was about to ask Lin if this heartless guy still cared about Tang Yun, but Lin interrupted her. What? Tang Yun is injured? Wait for me. I'll be right there. Lin didn't wait for Shinwen to finish and rushed out of the classroom with the phone. Tang Yun was Lin Yi's first real girlfriend. Although Lin wasn't good at sweet-talking, he had already treated Tang Yun as his woman. Tang Yun was injured, and this made Lin Yi's heart tighten. Is there any other problem with her? Is the injury serious? Which ward are you in? Lin Yi's continuous questions made Shinwen stunned. Before she called, she had already made several assumptions, but they were all based on Lin Yi's indifference, evasiveness, or unwillingness. She didn't expect Lin to be so anxious. She hadn't even explained what was going on, and Lin was coming. However, this also made Shinwen feel relieved. This Lin wasn't that despicable after all. At least she was worried about Tang Yun, unlike Kong Ming, who treated Xiaofan as a plaything and never had any real feelings for her. So, in Shinwen's heart, Lin could be forgiven. After all, many rich kids didn't have the freedom to decide their own marriages, although they might have found their true love. Under the pressure of their families, they had to give it up and be with someone their family arranged. From Shinwen's perspective, Feng Xiaoxiao's family might be special, and she might be able to help Lin So Lin had no choice but to be with her, and under Feng Xiaoxiao's pressure, he gave up Tang Yun. She's in room 512 of the second inpatient department. Shinwen told Lin the room number. No other injuries, just disfigurement. I understand. Lin let out a breath of relief, but he was still nervous. How did this happen? Chapter 580. Clarifying the misunderstanding suddenly. Shinwen's childishness came to her, and she purposely kept her phone to herself. What did he say? Tang Yun's heart tightened as she looked at Shinwen nervously. Shinwen dragged out the words on purpose. He's so nervous. He said he'll be here soon. Tang Yun's heart warmed, but her face reddened as she glared at Shinwen. You're making me nervous on purpose. Seeing her mother smile, Tang Yun was even more certain that Shinwen was doing it on purpose. Shinwen was sitting on the bed when she made the call. She was quite far away from Tang Yun, so she couldn't hear what Lin said on the phone. But Mrs. Tang was sitting next to Shinwen, so naturally she could hear what Lin was saying. Yun, it seems like Lin still likes you. I say, is there some kind of misunderstanding here? Shinwen calmed down. Lin Yi's nervousness wasn't fake. He was genuinely worried about Tang Yun. Lin had always been calm and collected. Even if something happened, he wouldn't be like this. It was probably only because of Tang Yun that he would be this nervous, right? I don't know. Tang Yun was a little shy, but her heart was filled with sweetness. Did he really care about her? Did he love her? Would he care about her if her face was disfigured? But what was up with Xiao? Tang Yun's heart started to worry again. As for whether or not she would be disfigured, Tang Yun didn't think about it anymore. Yeah, I think Lin likes you. Maybe I'll talk to him later and see what that girlfriend of his is thinking. What's his attitude towards her? Mrs. Tang was happy as well. I heard that a lot of big families' marriages are unfortunate. Those men have lovers outside, and they like their lovers, not their wives. If that's the case, you still have a chance. Mom, what nonsense are you talking about? Tang Yun's mood was much better now, so she wasn't as conflicted as before when her mother joked. Lin rushed out of the school, got into his car, and rushed to the First People's Hospital. He called Fatty Lai on the way. Fatty Lai, are you back yet? I just got back. I'm on my way back to the company to discuss the product launch. We've already received tens of millions of orders. Fatty Lai was very happy. It was only the first day, and they'd already received so many orders. Of course, many of them were related to the families at the auction, so they were the first to receive the news. Do you have injury medicine with you? Bring a bottle to Ward 512 of the 2nd Inpatient Department of the First People's Hospital. Hurry up. Linny hesitated for a moment and said, Bring a bottle of painkiller too. The injury medicine was already in mass production, so Fatty Lie had a lot of samples in his hands. Although the painkiller wasn't in mass production yet, he still had some samples. However, the special edition injury medicine was gone. Lin E had just returned, so he didn't have time to reconfigure it. However, Tang Yun's injury was new, so she didn't need the special edition injury medicine. In fact, the doctors at the First People's Hospital also knew that Tang Yun's injury was cured with Dr. Kang's Golden Creation Medicine. However, Dr. Kang's Golden Creation Medicine wasn't something ordinary people could buy. It was priceless, and even the hospital didn't have it, so they didn't mention it. Yes, I'll be right there. Fatty Lie didn't say much. He received Lin Yi's order and immediately went to execute it. This was Fatty Lie's personality. He listened to Lin Yi's words. Lin Yi didn't care about the traffic lights anymore. He directly drove to the hospital. Even if he was caught by the camera, Fatty Lie would pay for it. Lin Yi didn't care about the fine anymore. Tang Yun was more important than that. He rushed into the ward. For the first time, Lin Yi's emotions weren't calm. He didn't even greet Mrs. Tang and Lu Xinwen. He directly held Tang Yun's hand. Tang Yun, what happened to you? Why were you so careless? Tang Yun saw the deep concern in Lin Yi's eyes. She blushed slightly. Her heart was filled with sweetness. However, out of shyness, she wanted to pull her hand away from Lin Yi's big hand. You, let go of me. What are you doing here? What if Xiao Xiao finds out? Xiao Xiao? Lin Yi blinked. She's your girlfriend now. What am I? Although Tang Yun was confused by Lin Yi's expression, she couldn't help but blame him. Her? My girlfriend? Since when did she become my girlfriend? Lin Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he heard Tang Yun's words. My girlfriend is you. When did it become her? Mrs. Tang and Xinwen, on the other hand, froze at the words. Tang Yun was so shocked that she didn't know what to say. Her heart was filled with happiness. Tang Yun had already prepared for the worst-case scenario. Her mother wanted her to be Lin Yi's mistress. To be honest, Tang Yun didn't want to reject it, but it wasn't from the bottom of her heart. If it was forced, she could accept it. But Lin Yi's words made Tang Yun overjoyed. It didn't matter if Lin Yi was lying to her, or if he was telling the truth. Tang Yun was already very happy. At least this meant that Lin Yi still cared about her. Before, she told me that she's your girlfriend, and the money you gave my mom was my breakup fee. Tang Yun told him what happened in a small voice, including how she broke her phone. Lin Yi was speechless. He didn't know what to say. So he gave that money to the wrong person. This Xiao Xiao was just in time to get a breakup fee. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. Don't you know what Xiao Xiao's like? She's crazy all the time, and she dares to do anything. How could you believe her words? Tang Yun heard Lin Yi's explanation and knew that she misunderstood. She was speechless. However, Tang Yun felt a little ashamed. She was right, she didn't trust Lin Yi. If she had trusted him, wouldn't all of this have happened? But a girl's heart was sensitive, especially a girl who had just fallen in love. She was afraid of losing her lover. Tang Yun couldn't be blamed for being suspicious. Who told things to happen so coincidentally? Mrs. Tang, on the other hand, was grinning from ear to ear. It looked like it was all a misunderstanding. She couldn't help but blame her daughter. How could she be so petty? Even if Xiao Xiao and Lin Yi did something, she shouldn't have given up, right? You have to hold on. You have to hold on to happiness. How could you give up just like that? Chapter 581. Lin Yi's anger, but I'm already disfigured. You. Tang Yun suddenly thought of her current situation and felt sad. It was true that Lin Yi liked her, but would he still like her after seeing her like this? Tang Yun wasn't sure. After all, when Lin Yi first came into contact with her, it must be because of her beauty, right? Ha. Lin Yi suddenly laughed. What are you laughing at? Are you laughing at me? Tang Yun looked at Lin Yi angrily. So what if I'm disfigured? Lin Yi shrugged. Then what I'm asking is, do you still want me? Tang Yun stared at Lin Yi. Of course. Why not? Lin Yi nodded. Ugh. Tang Yun didn't know what to say. What did Lin Yi mean? At that moment, Fatty Lai entered the ward panting. It must have been hard on him. He had a body full of fat, but he ran like the wind. Boss, I'm here. Fatty Lai held 2 boxes and walked to Lin Yi. When he looked down, he saw Tang Yun on the bed. He was shocked. Sister-in-law, what's wrong? How did you get hurt? This was what Lin Yi wanted to know as well, but he didn't have the time yet. Lin Yi had just resolved the misunderstanding with Tang Yun, and now that Fatty Lai had brought the medicine over, Lin Yi naturally had to treat Tang Yun first. He didn't want Tang Yun to be disfigured. We'll talk about this later. Lin Yi took the boxes from Fatty Lai and said to Tang Yun, I'll apply some medicine for you. Okay. Tang Yun nodded without thinking. She was in a sweet and happy mood. She knew that Lin Yi wouldn't harm her, so she would cooperate with whatever Lin Yi wanted to do. Lin Yi helped Tang Yun up and started removing the bandage on her head, scaring Mrs. Tang and Xinwen. Lin Yi, what are you doing? Mrs. Tang asked as she watched Lin Yi remove the bandage on her daughter's head. Heal the wounds, Lin Yi replied. His hands didn't stop moving as he quickly removed the gauze. It might have touched the wound on Tang Yun's head. Tang Yun's body trembled slightly, and she couldn't help but frown. There was a horrifying wound on Tang Yun's forehead. Although it had been stitched up, it was still horrifying. Lin Yi's heart ached. How could this girl be so careless? Fortunately, I have injury medicine. Otherwise, wouldn't I really be disfigured? Don't worry, it won't hurt soon. Lin Yi opened the box and applied the painkiller evenly on Tang Yun's forehead. This kind of painkiller could be taken orally and applied externally. Mrs. Tang was a bit scared. She didn't know what Lin Yi was going to do, but she didn't dare to stop him. She thought that Lin Yi wouldn't harm her daughter. If Lin Yi didn't really like her daughter, he could just ignore her since she was in this state. Why would he go through all this trouble? Xinwen, on the other hand, was much calmer. When she sent Xiaofan to the hospital, Lin Yi's amazing acupuncture was still fresh in her mind. Tang Yun also said that Lin Yi knew medicine. So Xinwen thought that Lin Yi was definitely treating Tang Yun. After applying the painkiller, Tang Yun was shocked to find that her forehead didn't hurt anymore. How was this possible? She couldn't help but look at Lin Yi in shock. It was unbelievable. Lin Yi quickly removed the stitches on Tang Yun's forehead, and the wound opened up. Blood flowed out, but Lin Yi wasn't in a rush. He slowly applied the ointment on the wound, and it didn't take long for the bleeding to stop. After doing all this, Lin Yi wrapped the gauze on Tang Yun's forehead again and smiled. It's done. You won't be disfigured anymore. Lin Yi was too lazy to use painkillers on the female assassin Yang Chi-Chi or himself. This kind of wound was nothing. He could just apply the injury medicine directly. But Tang Yun couldn't. She didn't have professional training. This kind of pain was hard to bear. Not anymore? Tang Yun heard Lin Yi's words. She was surprised and happy, but she also felt that it was unbelievable. Not anymore. Lin Yi nodded. This is my company's first product. It's called injury medicine. It has the same effect as Dr. Kang's golden creation. Mrs. Tang didn't believe that her daughter wouldn't be disfigured, but after hearing Lin Yi's words, she believed it. Dr. Kang's golden creation was famous, but this wasn't a product that normal people like them could buy. It was a limited supply of miraculous medicine. It was hard to buy, even if you had to go through a lot of channels. It was said that after applying it, the wound would heal quickly without leaving any scars. It was amazing. Ha ha! Tang Yun finally put down her worries. She couldn't help but like Lin even more. Being his girlfriend was great. She wouldn't have to disfigure herself. Just take a sip of this painkiller if you feel any pain later, Lin, he said as he handed the painkiller to Mrs. Tang. One night, and you'll be able to remove the bandages. That's fast, Mrs. Tang exclaimed. At the same time, her mind became active again. Lil E, your Uncle Tang's legs were broken. Is there any way to help him recover faster? Uncle Tang is injured too? Linny paused. His face became serious. Before, he thought that Tang Yun's injury was an accident, so he didn't think much about it. But now that Mrs. Tang said that Tang Juqing was injured as well, Lin Yi started to suspect something, especially when Mrs. Tang said that she was injured. Could there be something going on? What happened? How did Tang Yun and Uncle Tang get injured? Well, it's like this. Mrs. Tang didn't think about asking Lin Yi to help them. After all, from her point of view, those people were like mafia members. They did whatever they wanted, and normal people couldn't afford to offend them. She told Lin Yi that it was because her house collapsed. She wanted Lin Yi to help solve it. Otherwise, where would she live in the future? Mrs. Tang told Lin Yi everything that happened. She didn't dare hide anything from him. She told him about how she was greedy for money and how she wanted to get the store. If there wasn't a cause, then why would there be such a thing? After listening to Mrs. Tang's story, Lin Yi's face darkened. In his heart, he was already extremely furious. These people dared to treat Tang Yun like this. They had crossed Lin Yi's bottom line. Lin Yi was infuriated. Master Bing, very good. Chapter 582. Completion Ceremony Boss. Zhao Qibing is a very famous young master in our province. His family background is very mysterious. I heard that he's related to the hidden houses. Li Zihua from Songshan is his subordinate. Fatty Lai was afraid that Lin Yi would act rashly and quickly revealed Zhao Qibing's background. I heard that he's a bastard child, but there's no proof. What's a hidden house? Lin Yi didn't seem to care about what Fatty Lai said. Hidden houses are more mysterious than the 4 big and 5 small houses. No one knows the names of these houses except for Houseu. I heard that they're a branch of a hidden house, or that Houseu itself is a branch of a hidden house. Fatty Lai said with a serious expression, but the hidden houses are stronger than these noble houses. It's just that they rarely interfere with the affairs of the common world. Oh, Lin Yi nodded expressionlessly. You don't have to say that. Just tell me where Zhao Qibing is. Fatty Lai froze. He knew that Lin Yi was determined to touch Zhao Qibing. He said helplessly, Zhao Qibing established a Qibing real estate company in Songshan. The Qibing skyscraper was just completed today. Zhao Qibing is holding a completion ceremony at the Qibing restaurant in front of the skyscraper. He invited a lot of famous people in Songshan. I received an invitation as well. Completion? Lin Yi smiled coldly. Fatty Lai, go find some trenching machines and bulldozers. We're going to meet this Master Bing. Lin Yi's tone was filled with certainty. Fatty Lai knew that no matter what background Zhao Qibing had, he wouldn't be able to stop his boss's anger. However, Fatty Lai was firm. Since his boss was going to touch Zhao Qibing, as his follower, he had to take the lead. He had decided to follow Lin Yi. He didn't care if Zhao Qibing was from a hidden house. Yes, boss. Fatty Lai was in the real estate business. Naturally, he had an engineering team. It wasn't hard to find some bulldozers and trenching machines. Tang Yun was shocked after hearing Lin Yi's words. Lin Yi, what are you doing? Don't cause trouble. Let's go see Uncle Tang first. Lin Yi didn't respond to Tang Yun's words. He understood Tang Yun's worry, but Lin Yi's mind was set. If someone dared to touch Tang Yun, how could Lin Yi let them go so easily? Tang Yun saw that Lin Yi didn't reply. She knew that Lin Yi wanted revenge for her, but she was afraid that Lin Yi wasn't a match. Lin Yi didn't know that. Qibing was from the 4 big and 5 small houses. That sounded very scary. And that Zhao Qibing was related to a hidden house that was even more powerful than the 4 big and 5 small houses. How could Tang Yun not be nervous? She didn't need to be disfigured anymore, and naturally, she wanted to be with him peacefully. She didn't want him to cause any more trouble. Tang Yun was touched, but she was afraid that something would happen to Lin Yi. What would she do if something happened to Lin Yi? Lin Yi sneered. He should have considered the consequences before he touched you. Don't kill people. Tang Yun knew that Lin Yi was strong, and when he was angry, he wouldn't care about the consequences. She was afraid that Lin Yi would cause trouble. She would rather not have Lin Yi stand up for her. Murder. Lin Yi was startled. In his heart, he had already blacklisted Master Bing, but Tang Yun's words reminded Lin Yi, if it were the old him, Qibing would have been nothing but a shrimp in his eyes, someone he could kill with a wave of his hand. There wouldn't be any consequences even if he was killed, but it was a little difficult to kill Zhao Qibing in front of everyone. However, even if he could avoid death, he couldn't escape punishment. There were many ways to turn someone into a living dead, and there was no need for Lin Yi to be wanted by the police just to kill Zhao Qibing. I won't kill him today. When Lin Yi said that, he already treated Zhao Qibing as a dead man. Even if he didn't die today, he would die in the future. However, Lin Yi wouldn't say that to Tang Yun. He said, "Let's see Uncle Tang first." Tang Yun sighed. She didn't understand the hidden meaning in Lin Yi's words, but she knew that Lin Yi wouldn't let Zhao Qibing go easily. However, would this cause trouble? Mrs. Tang accompanied Lin Yi to Tang Juqing's room. Mr. Tang knew that his daughter had broken up with Lin Yi, so he was surprised to see Lin Yi. However, seeing that Lin Yi was still as respectful as before, Tang Juqing found it strange. However, Mrs. Tang was here, so Tang Juqing didn't ask too much. He planned to ask about the details later. Lin Yi checked on Tang Juqing's condition. It was just a broken bone, but it was already connected. It was no big deal. However, Lin Yi quickly wrote down a prescription and gave it to Mrs. Tang. Get the medicine according to this prescription. Take it in the morning and night, 1 medicine a day, and you'll recover in a month. It's just a neurological problem. I need to get the medicine from my hometown. Okay. Mrs. Tang took the prescription carefully. She was very grateful to Lin Yi. Mrs. Tang had seen her daughter's miraculous ability to stop pain in an instant, so she trusted Lin Yi even more now. If Lin Yi said that it would be fine, then it must be fine. After saying goodbye to Mrs. Tang and Tang Yun, Lin Yi walked out of the hospital, but his face was dark. Although Lin Yi didn't know what the hidden house was, Lin Yi was never afraid of anyone. It didn't matter if they were from a hidden house or not. He would deal with Zhao Qibing first. Boss, the bulldozer and trenching machine are ready. I've also contacted the demolition team. Fatty Lai guessed what Lin Yi wanted to do. Lin Yi nodded. That completion ceremony. When does it start? 6 at night, Fatty Lai said. Oh, it's already started. Let's go. Lin Yi looked at the time on his phone. Fatty Lai didn't drive his own car. He got on Lin Yi's broken van. He had to give Lin Yi directions. As for the trenching machine, bulldozer, and the demolition team, Fatty Lai had already called them to be on standby near Qibing's skyscraper. Zhao Qibing had long forgotten about the unhappiness in the morning. Other than feeling that it was a pity that a girl as beautiful as a goddess had her face ruined, he didn't have any other thoughts. To him, the people in the slums were no different from ants. It was a piece of cake to stomp them to death. Right now, he had more important things to do. Today was a big day for Chibing real estate. Chapter 583. Tit for tat among them were Jiangwen, Taizao, and the disciples of the 5 small noble houses. The 4 noble houses didn't live near Jiangshan, so they couldn't participate. However, one disciple from House Sun came. Wu Chuntian was originally in Songshan as well, but old Wu had just been discharged from the hospital, so he had to deal with some family matters before coming back. But even so, it made the completion ceremony a lot more exciting. Jiangwen, Taizao, the disciples of the 5 small noble houses, House Sun, these people all had strong social connections, and so they brought a lot of people with them. The lobby of Chibing Hotel was already bustling with noise and excitement. Chibing stood on the stage, raising his glass high, very pleased with the current situation. These people represented the various powers in Songshan, and even the province. This meant that his business in Songshan would definitely be very successful in the future. Thank you, everyone, for coming to the completion ceremony of Chibing Real Estate's office building, Chibing Skyscraper. Let us raise our glasses and celebrate this joyous moment. Chibing raised his glass and continued, "Let us drink this glass of wine and open the Chibing Skyscraper together." The guests raised their glasses as well, drinking with Chibing. But at that moment, there was a sudden explosion that made everyone jump in fright. Following the loud noise was an earthquake that shook the mountains. Someone shouted, "It's collapsing. The skyscraper outside is collapsing." Chibing looked towards the direction of the shout and saw that the newly completed skyscraper, which hadn't been opened yet, collapsed with a loud noise. There were many bulldozers and trenching machines around the skyscraper, not only destroying the facilities around it, but also the parking lot and landscaping around the skyscraper. In the blink of an eye, a 10,000-meter tall skyscraper was flattened. Chibing's eyes widened, as if he had seen a ghost, but he quickly reacted. Someone was demolishing his skyscraper. Chibing couldn't care less about the guests and rushed out of the restaurant, but Uncle Zhu followed him closely. Lin Yi stood in between the skyscraper and the restaurant, watching coldly as Chibing's skyscraper was flattened. "If you tear down Tang Yun's house, I'll tear down your skyscraper." Fatty Lai had been building for many years, but this was the first time he'd torn down a building that had just been built. Seeing a 10,000-meter tall building collapse in an instant, he was overjoyed. Only Big Boss would be able to do something like this. "Who are you? What are you doing?" Chibing's eyes were about to spit fire. He didn't know where these people came from, but they were tearing down his newly built building the moment they arrived. How could Chibing not be hysterical? "You're Xiao Chibing's?" Lin Yi looked at him coldly. "That's right." Chibing took a deep breath, regaining his calmness. If the person in front of him knew who he was, then he should know who he was. Even then, they still dared to come and tear down his building. What was the meaning of that? Although Xiao Chibing wanted to tear Lin Yi's body into a million pieces right now, he was the one who made him look bad. The completion ceremony turned into a demolition ceremony. This made Xiao Chibing lose a lot of face. It was even more humiliating than before. "I'm Tang Yun's boyfriend." Lin Yi nodded and said faintly, "You destroyed her house, but you still owe me a pair of legs. I'll also disfigure your face." "Tang Yun?" Chibing froze, but after hearing Lin Yi say that he destroyed her house, disfigured her face, and owed her a pair of legs, he knew who Lin Yi was talking about. Wasn't it the pretty girl he had his eyes on this morning? But Chibing didn't expect that Tang Yun had such a powerful boyfriend. These bulldozers and trenching machines couldn't be gathered by normal people in such a short amount of time. Lin Yi didn't give him a chance to speak. He walked towards him step by step. "You won't live past this year." "Uncle Zhu, kill him." Chibing didn't put Lin Yi in his eyes. Lin Yi had already made him lose all his face. If he didn't kill Lin Yi to vent his anger, then he wouldn't be able to raise his head in front of all these people. As for the consequences of killing Lin Yi, Cheebing didn't need to think about it. These people knew his background, and they wouldn't dare to say anything. Plus, these people's underlings weren't that clean, and they wouldn't expose Cheebing. Lin Yi ignored Cheebing and continued walking towards him. Uncle Zhu moved and slapped towards Lin Yi. Lin Yi's eyes flashed with a strange light as he blocked Uncle Zhu's attack with his palm. With a loud bang, Uncle Zhu took a few steps back and spat out a mouthful of blood. His breathing stagnated. Uncle Zhu looked at Lin Yi in disbelief. Mystic class. This person was a mystic class as well. Lin Yi's throat felt sweet, but he didn't retreat. He continued to approach Cheebing step by step. Cheebing was dumbfounded as well. He knew how strong Uncle Zhu was. He was a mystic class master. It wasn't a common sight in the family, and it was precisely because of his father's love for him that he sent Uncle Zhu to take care of him. But a master like that was pushed back by Lin Yi with just one palm, and even made him spit blood? How was this possible? This young man in front of him wasn't even 20 years old, right? Uncle Zhu wanted to rush over to save Cheebing, but he had just exchanged a palm strike with Lin Yi and suffered quite a bit of internal injury. His breathing hadn't stabilized yet, and he couldn't move at all. He couldn't even speak. Cheebing was finally afraid. He was arrogant, but he wasn't an idiot. Someone who could push Uncle Zhu back was a piece of cake for him. He turned around, not caring about his face anymore. He wanted to run. However, Lin Yi stood in front of him. "Leave your legs," Lin Yi said faintly. "I'm a descendant of House Xiao. You can't do this." Cheebing revealed his identity. "My father is Zhao Guangyin." "Who's Zhao Guangyin? I don't know him. Is he Zhao Guangyin's brother?" Lin Yi slapped Cheebing's head, making him look unrecognizable. Blood flowed from his face, and he didn't know where he was injured. How strong was Lin Yi's strength? Zhao Cheebing's head flipped, and he fainted. But in the next moment, Zhao Cheebing woke up again as he clearly felt the pain in his legs and the crisp sound of his bones breaking. Crack, crack, Cheebing fainted again. Chapter 584. Lin Yi was injured. Let go of Master Bing. Uncle Zhu had finished adjusting his breathing and quickly stood in front of Lin Yi. "Mystic early phase, I know your strength. Although you're stronger than me, I will protect Master Bing with my life." Lin Yi smiled coldly as he glanced at Master Bing on the ground, then at Uncle Zhu. "I've done what I wanted to do. Let's leave Songshan City, or else I might remember what he did." Threat. This was a blatant threat. Uncle Zhu's face changed. Ever since he entered Mystic class, he had never been threatened by anyone. One had to know that in the common world, Mystic class masters were rare, but this young man in front of him, who looked less than 20 years old, had the strength of an early phase, Mystic class. Don't be too arrogant. With your strength, you're not strong enough. But before Uncle Zhu could finish, Lin Yi had already turned around and left. Ignored. It was another blatant disregard. This made Uncle Zhu's face turn even uglier. However, he had no other choice. If he fought with Lin Yi, it was hard to say who would die. Uncle Zhu had no way to deal with him. What's more, he was like a crossbow that was forced to stand. He felt that he could fall to the ground at any time. Lin Yi got into the van. Fatty Lai, who was already waiting in the car, gave him a thumbs up. "Boss, you're too awesome. You dared to cripple Zhao Cheebing's legs in this situation. Drive." Lin Yi spat out a mouthful of blood onto the windshield of the van. He started coughing nonstop. "Boss, what's wrong?" Fatty Lai was shocked. He thought that Lin Yi was very powerful just now. Who knew that Lin Yi was injured? "Drive. Hurry and find a quiet place," Lin Yi panted, as he ordered Fatty Lai. Fatty Lai nodded and didn't dare to delay. He quickly started the car and disappeared from the Cheebing skyscraper. Fatty Lai wanted to send Lin Yi to the hospital, but on second thought, Lin Yi was a miracle doctor. Why would he go to the hospital? He naturally had his reasons for wanting her to go to a quieter place. With that in mind, Fatty Lai sped towards his villa. Lin Yi had been holding his breath until now. His only thought was to avenge Tang Yun. That was why he didn't show any signs of injury after taking Uncle Zhu's attack. He did want to do something to Zhao Qibing, but he couldn't take it anymore. Lin Yi didn't think that a bastard would have an early mystic class master by his side. Were mystic class masters too cheap, or were those hidden families too powerful? He had underestimated his opponent. He thought that he could kill Zhao Qibing this year, but he didn't. Making someone die slowly was Lin Yi's specialty. Lin Yi said that he wouldn't kill Zhao Qibing today, but that didn't mean that he wouldn't kill him tomorrow or in the future. Lin Yi felt an indescribable discomfort. His internal organs had shifted. An early-stage mystic class master could be said to be on the same level as Lin Yi. It was just that Lin Yi practiced the art of dragon mastery, so he was able to take the hit and break Zhao Qibing's legs. Uncle Zhu, on the other hand, almost fainted. When they reached Fatty Lai's villa, Fatty Lai didn't bother to lock his car. In fact, he wouldn't lose his car even if he didn't lock it. Fatty Lai helped Lin Yi back to the villa, and Fatty Lai's wife jumped in fright. She wanted to ask something, but Fatty Lai glared back at her. Fatty Lai helped Lin Yi into the guest room. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. "Guard the door. Don't let anyone disturb me." "Yes, boss." Fatty Lai nodded and closed the door for Lin Yi. Lin Yi fell onto the bed and entered the jade space. Only by absorbing a large amount of pure energy could he recover quickly. Fortunately, he had this treasure. If it was a normal person, they would die without any elixirs in the outside world. In fact, Uncle Zhu felt like he was about to die. It was only after Lin Yi left that Sihua dared to run over. He knew how strong Lin Yi was after all. Even 2 golden class masters had fallen to his hands. He didn't know how strong this Uncle Zhu was, but the fact that he was with Master Bing meant that he was stronger than the 2 golden class masters from before. Could he be a mystic class master? Sihua didn't dare imagine. Someone as strong as him was beaten to the point of vomiting blood by Lin Yi. What kind of strength did Lin Yi have? "Master Bing, how are you?" Sihua ran over to check on Qibing's injuries. After all, it was fine if Uncle Zhu died, but if Qibing died, it would be a huge problem. "Master Bing is fine, just a broken leg. I can't hold on anymore. Call the head and ask Yao Wang to save me." Uncle Zhu knew his situation. If he didn't have elixirs and relied on his own recovery, he would die in a few days. Sihua jumped in fright, quickly dialing up the house head's number after hearing Uncle Zhu's words. Jiang Wen, Tai Zhao, and the others who were watching from the back were also shocked at Lin Yi's boldness. He dared to hurt someone in public. Of course, Jiang Wen, Tai Zhao, and the others, including Sihua, didn't know Uncle Zhu's true strength. Jiang Wen, Tai Zhao, and the others would be shocked if they knew that Uncle Zhu was a mystic, right? This Lin Yi was too strong, defeating a mystic class master in one hit. They didn't see that Lin Yi was injured, so they thought that Uncle Zhu was just a useless bodyguard. But at this moment, no one dared to come over. Everyone knew about Master Bing's mysterious background. So wouldn't they embarrass Master Bing even more? Wouldn't they be asking for trouble? The completion ceremony of Qibing's skyscraper had become a joke. Completion? What completion? The house had already been demolished by others. Sihua didn't think that Lin Yi would be this ruthless. Not only did he bring people to demolish Qibing's skyscraper, but he even broke Master Bing's legs. How could this person be so unscrupulous? Sihua thought that he was already a very domineering person in Songshan, but compared to Lin Yi, he was still a far cry. Thinking back to the time when he threatened Lin Yi, Sihua couldn't help but feel a little scared. If Lin Yi really wanted to make things difficult for him, then the floating cloud bar would be gone, wouldn't it? Sihua sighed. It seemed that he had underestimated this opponent too much. This Lin was someone that Peng Zhan could find. So he was obviously not an ordinary person. Chapter 585. What's the matter? Oh, little Lee, what's up? It was the deep male voice that came from the other side of the phone. This person was Zhao Guangyin, the young master of House Zhao. Behind him was the old man of House Zhao, which was why Guangyin didn't dare to openly acknowledge Zhao Qibing as his illegitimate son. Boss, it's bad. Master Bing's face and legs were broken. Uncle Zhu was injured as well, and Qibing's skyscraper was destroyed. Xihua couldn't hide the shock in his heart as he spoke. There was a moment of silence on the other side of the phone, followed by Guangyin's incredulous voice. What did you say? Little Bing's legs were broken, and Mr. Zhu was injured? How is that possible? Mr. Zhu is an early-phase mystic class master. It's rare even in the common world. Are you having a fever? How could Little Bing become enemies with someone like that? Ah, early-phase mystic class? Sihua's mouth opened wide in shock once more. He knew that Uncle Zhu was very strong. After all, Master Bing's men couldn't be weaker than the 2 golden class masters Guangyin sent to him, right? But now that he heard Guangyin say that Uncle Zhu was an early-phase mystic class master, Sihua was shocked once more. Someone as strong as him was injured so badly by Lin Yi's attack that he couldn't take it anymore? What kind of existence was Lin Yi? Was he stronger than an early-phase mystic class master? Give me the phone. I'll talk to the master. Uncle Zhu started channeling his practitioner's arts, adjusting his breathing and recovering some of his stamina as he signaled to Sihua. Sihua hurriedly passed the phone to Uncle Zhu. Guangyin would only believe Uncle Zhu's words. In fact, Sihua didn't believe that a 19-year-old boy like Lin Yi could defeat Uncle Zhu. This world was too crazy, or were mystic class masters so worthless? Mr. Zhu, I'm Guangyin. How are you? Guangyin still couldn't believe that Uncle Zhu was injured. It was too unbelievable. He had only been in Songshan for a few days. How did Qibing meet such a strong opponent? To be able to injure a mystic class master, he must be a reclusive old geezer, right? These old fellows were all pursuing greater strength. So how could they have the mind to pay attention to the trivial matters of the secular world? Patriarch, it's me. I can only hold on for 2 more days. I've suffered internal injuries. Please ask the Medicine King to save me. Uncle Zhu's tone was very weak. Without any miraculous pills and medicines, the natural energy of nature is not enough to heal my injuries. What? It was only after hearing Uncle Zhu's words that Guangyin completely believed Sihua's words. Uncle Zhu was injured. Moreover, his injuries were not light. But hearing that Uncle Zhu could still hold on for 2 more days, Guangyin let out a sigh of relief. He was glad that Uncle Zhu could recover. Uncle Zhu was only in his 40s, and he was one of the most promising experts in the family to advance into the Earth class. If he really died like this, and it was because of his illegitimate son, then his position as the head of the family would be shaken. Zhao Guangyin took a deep breath and asked, "How is Xiao Bing?" Master Bing doesn't have any fatal injuries. Both his legs are broken and his face is disfigured. But with Yao Wang personally treating him, there shouldn't be any side effects, Uncle Zhu said. That's good. Hearing that his son was fine, Zhao Guangyin finally let out a sigh of relief. I'll ask Yao Wang to go over right now. Also, I want to know the cause of this incident and what happened. I'll let Sihua tell you about this. Uncle Zhu didn't know much about the cause and what happened because he didn't need to know. His duty was to protect Master Bing's safety, and as for the company's operations, he didn't care. So until now, Uncle Zhu still didn't know how Zhao Qibing made such a big enemy. One had to know that a mystic class master, although the hidden noble houses wouldn't pay attention to him, but in the secular world, in the 4 big and 5 small noble houses. He was an extremely powerful existence. He was someone who could do whatever he wanted, and all the heads of the noble houses had to give face to him. How many days had it been since Xiao Qibing came to Songshan? How many days had he created such a strong opponent? Although that person was at the early phase of mystic class, the same strength as Uncle Zhu could feel that Lin Yi's practice was much purer than his. Under the situation where they were at the same level, he wouldn't be able to fight against Lin Yi. If he knew that Lin Yi had just entered the mystic class 2 days ago and hadn't consolidated his strength yet, Uncle Zhu would probably vomit blood again. He had been in the mystic class for almost 10 years, and he had only reached the peak of the early phase of mystic class and was advancing towards the mid-phase of mystic class. Sihua took the phone. He knew that Uncle Zhu and Master Bing were fine for the time being, so he wasn't that worried anymore. He started from Xiao Qibing's demolition of the slums, how he fell in love with Lin Yi's girlfriend, and how he destroyed Tang Yun's house, injuring Tang Yun and Tang Juqing. After that, he followed Lin Yi to take revenge. Of course, Sihua hated Lin Yi very much. Back then, the 2 golden class masters by his side died in Lin Yi's hands, so there was no new master in place. This made Sihua lose his confidence even when he went out. If it wasn't for Lin Yi, he wouldn't have ended up like this. Moreover, what annoyed him the most was that if it wasn't for Lin Yi, a part of Pengzhan Industries would have become Master Bing's property. Why would he and Jean Gubong invest to build a new building for Master Bing, the headquarters of Qibing Real Estate? Boss, the 2 golden class masters who were with me were killed by this kid. We can't let him get away with it. Sihua added after he was done narrating the story. Boss, the 2 golden class masters with me were killed by this kid. We can't let him go. If it wasn't for him, we would have gotten the real estate company we gave to Master Bing a long time ago, and maybe Pengzhan Industries would have been ours as well. But this kid stopped us, and now he injured Master Bing and Uncle Zhu. We can't let him go. At first, Sihua thought that Guanyin would be furious, but this time, Guanyin was very calm. His voice was calm as well. This Lin Yi, let's not provoke him for now. Let's wait for Yao Wang to go and test him first. Although Guanyin was furious, he wasn't an idiot. If Lin Yi could injure Uncle Zhu, it meant that he had reached mystic class. But what did a 20-year-old mystic class master represent? Qibing didn't believe that Lin Yi was someone who trained himself. Chapter 586. House Xiao's head so. Lin Yi probably had a huge family backing him, but which hidden house did he come from? In order to deal with Lin Yi, he had to get to the bottom of Lin Yi's background. He couldn't act recklessly. If Lin Yi really was a master nurtured by a hidden house and was killed by him, then that hidden house would go all out against House Xiao. Mystic at 20, his future was limitless. He might even reach the late phase of Earth class, or even Sky class. If House Xiao killed him, then Lin Yi's family would go crazy. But they couldn't rule out the possibility that Lin Yi was just lucky, or maybe he ate some miraculous elixir, or maybe he broke through on his own. If that was the case, then they could just kill Lin Yi right away. It was the first time Sihua heard the head of the house speak in such a tone. He paused for a moment, but still replied, "All right, I understand." The ambulance came, and Sihua sent Master Bing and Uncle Zhu to the hospital for some simple treatment. Then he waited for Yao Wang to come personally. Guanyin, on the other hand, put down the phone and sighed. He stood up with a serious expression, walked out of the room, and walked towards an independent villa. "Young master, you're here." Guanyin was stopped by an old man the moment he arrived at the door. The old man spoke politely, but he didn't seem to have any intention of letting Guanyin in. "Elder Bai, I'm here to see my father." Guanyin didn't mind at all. Instead, he spoke respectfully to the old man. This was because Elder Bai was one of the few masters left in House Xiao, a guard of House Xiao. He was Guang Yin's father's right-hand man. He was single, unmarried, and had no children. He stayed by Guang Yin's father's side, even when he was old, being a responsible right-hand man. Please wait a moment, young master. I'll report to the head of the house. Elder Bai nodded and went back into the villa, while Guang Yin stood at the door respectfully, not daring to do anything. After a while, Elder Bai came out again and nodded to Guang Yin. Young leader, the leader wants you in. In actuality, Zhao Guangyin was already the head of the Zhao family. Old Zhao had stepped down from the position a few years ago to focus on cultivation. But in Elder Bai's eyes, old Zhao would always be the head of the Zhao family, and Guangyin was just the young head. However, Zhao Guangyin didn't have any other thoughts about this form of address. After all, although he was the head of the family, there were many situations where he had to ask his father for instructions. He could use the mystic class masters in the family, but earth class masters like Elder Bai, he couldn't. Zhao Guangyin respectfully entered the villa and saw that his father was already sitting in the living room, quietly sipping on a cup of tea. Zhao Guangyin hurriedly bowed and said, "Father." "Yes, what do you need me for?" Old Zhao had always been focused on cultivation, looking for the opportunity to break through to earth class. He didn't really care about the family's business anymore, and unless it was something big, Guangyin wouldn't bother him. In actuality, the hidden noble houses didn't care about the common world's business. Although they had some companies and representatives in the common world, they weren't as powerful as the 4 great worlds and the 5 small noble houses. These people were just there to make money for the family, and they didn't need much in terms of material needs. With the wealth they had accumulated over the generations, they didn't even need to run a company outside to survive. Running a company outside meant that they didn't want to run out of money, so they used the profits to keep the family afloat. They didn't want to touch the family business if they could. That was the only way to ensure the family's prosperity. The most important thing was that the hidden noble houses had an agreement with each other to not get involved in the common world's business. Otherwise, the common world would be filled with Wuling masters, and the rules would be messed up. If they all came out, would the noble houses still have a way out? Plus, they pursued the highest level of martial arts, and their desire was to reach the peak and live forever. They had no interest in the outside world. Dad, Lil Bing's legs were crippled, and Mr. Zhu was seriously injured. Zhao Guangyin naturally had to report such a big matter to the old master. Oh, old Zhao's eyes flashed. Lil Zhu is a mystic early phase, right? How did he get injured? Other than the U branch, who else in the common world would have a master like that? Old Zhao's words were like a wake-up call. Guangyin suddenly remembered that his wife's family was Haosu, wasn't it? Could it be that his wife found out that he had a bastard son outside and sent someone to deal with Zhao Qibing? Qibing's face changed at the thought, and he started to get nervous. Could it be Haosu? Did Yu Shaojin find out about Lil Bing? Yu Shaojin was Qibing's wife, a member of Haosu. She was the youngest daughter of Haosu, and old Yu loved her dearly. It was possible that it was Yu Shaojin who did it. Shaojin knew about Lil Bing a long time ago. She didn't cause trouble with you, because she's a sensible person. If you didn't bring Zhao Qibing back, she'd turn a blind eye to it. As for sending someone to deal with Lil Bing, that's impossible. Old Zhao said, unless Lil Bing threatens her son's position, which is your youngest son. So it's not Haosu? Guangyin paused, not expecting his wife to know about Zhao Qibing. He thought she didn't know. He couldn't help but smile bitterly at the thought. The women of Haosu were really not simple. It was a marriage of mutual benefit, but she'd been gentle and polite all these years, taking care of his daily life. It was hard to imagine that she used to be the daughter of Haosu. I didn't say that. Old Yu isn't someone who likes to lose out, and he loves Shaojin the most. It's possible that he'd send someone to deal with Lil Bing for Shaojin. Old Zhao shook his head, Don't put too much hope on Lilsbing. I don't think he's a spoiled young master. Of course, our Zhao family won't be bullied so easily. I understand this matter. Spread the word and put a bounty on this person's head among all the hidden families. If other families speak up, then consider it. If no one says anything, then that means this person isn't from a hidden family. Chapter 587. The girl from House Yu, of course. If no one cared, then House Xiao would be able to kill Lin Yi without a care in the world. But Guangyin was more inclined to believe that it was House Yu who did it. How could it be so coincidental? Qibing went to a small slum area in Songshan to demolish a house, and he was able to find a mystic class master. Weren't there too many masters in this world? Guangyin didn't believe that there wasn't a reason behind this, so he decided to tell Xiaojin about it when he got back. After all, Xiaojin already knew about Qibing's situation, and she was Qibing's aunt. Even if House Yu did it, they'd have to give an explanation. Guangyin said goodbye to Elder Zhao and returned to his villa. He found his wife, Xiaojin, and told her about Zhao Qibing. Of course, Guangyin was very sincere in admitting the mistakes he made when he was young and begging for his wife's forgiveness. Xiaojin didn't say anything, only smiling as she listened to her husband. She shook her head. I knew about Qibing a long time ago. I just wanted to see when you would be honest with me. Not only me, but my father knows as well, so I don't think it's us who did it. If we wanted to teach him a lesson, we would have done it long ago. Guangyin pretended to be surprised and moved to tears. Xiaojin, so you knew about it all along. I really don't know what to say. Our marriage was for the family's benefit, but after all these years, we've developed feelings for each other, and we have a child. I don't want to dwell on the past, but I have one condition, and that is that your child cannot return to House Xiao. Xiaojin made it very clear. He won't. Guangyin promised. As for whether or not that Lin Yi is from House Yu, I'll ask Big Brother for you, Xiaojin said. Zhao Guangyin let out a sigh of relief. As long as it wasn't someone from House Yu, everything would be fine. House Yu was one of the strongest hidden houses. Who would have thought that the abandoned bastard of House Yu, one of the 4 great houses of the common world, would actually rebuild House Yu, turning the head of the 4 great houses of the common world? House Yu, it seemed like a joke, but it was the truth. Of course, it was said that this bastard, Yu Xiaojin's father, had a fortuitous encounter that allowed him to break through Earth class and become a Sky class. That was more than 10 years ago. No one knew how strong he was now. As for what was above the heaven rank, only that mysterious man whose name had once shaken the world knew. House Yu was the envy of all the houses, but it was also a mountain that couldn't be imitated or surpassed. Who asked them to be so lucky? Lin Yi's arrest warrant was quickly sent out. Of course, it was only limited to the hidden aristocratic families. As for the 4 great aristocratic families and the 5 small aristocratic families, Zhao Guangyin didn't even bother to ask. Those aristocratic families in the common world couldn't possibly have a master like Lin Yi. It was a place with verdant hills and limpid waters, with several European-style ancient castles standing tall. A fairy-like girl sat in front of the window, drawing something on a drawing board. Sometimes she frowned, and sometimes she smiled, hearing the sound of footsteps coming from the door. The girl quickly closed the drawing board in her hand and combed the hair in front of her forehead, trying to make her expression normal. Just as she turned around, the door of the room was pushed open. The girl's heart tightened, and the corner of her mouth curled up beautifully. 2 dimples appeared on her rosy cheeks. Brother, why didn't you knock again? Hey, didn't you leave the door unlocked? A handsome boy casually walked into the room and said with a smile, Huh? Little sister, why is your face so red? Don't tell me you're fantasizing again? The girl frowned. Brother, what are you saying? That's so bad. Hee, let me see what you're drawing. The boy jumped in front of the girl in a few steps, trying to snatch the drawing board from the girl's table. The girl was shocked, and she grabbed the drawing board tightly, not letting the boy take it. However, she wasn't as strong as the boy, and she couldn't help but get angry. "Let go!" The boy didn't let go, and pulled on the drawing board with all his might. The girl was afraid that he would ruin the work she had been working on for almost a month, and could only let go. However, her beautiful eyes were filled with anger as she glared at the boy. "Ha! You dare say you're not fantasizing? Look, they're holding hands. Ha 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 ha." The boy laughed. "None of your business." The girl grabbed the drawing back from the boy's hand when he wasn't paying attention and closed the drawing board. It was a very beautiful sketch. On the drawing, a young girl and a man were holding hands as they ran happily on a grassland filled with birds and fragrant flowers. That young girl was herself. "Little sister, Dad received a call just now, and I think he mentioned someone's name." The boy looked at the girl with a smile. The girl's heart tightened, but she said, "Who? What does it have to do with me?" "If you don't want to know, then forget it. Pretend I never came." With that, the boy turned around and walked out. "Brother, tell me, what did Dad say?" The girl was panicking, and she stared at the boy. "If you don't tell me, I won't talk to you anymore. Dad received a call just now, and it seemed like Annie asked if there was a person named Lynn E. in our house. That's all I heard. I don't know anything else." The boy quickly said what he heard. "Annie? She called Dad?" The girl was startled, not understanding why Annie would suddenly ask about this. "What did Dad say?" "Dad said he doesn't know." The boy shrugged. "Even if he does know, he'll pretend he doesn't know." The girl really wanted to call her Annie right now, but that would make things even more complicated. In the end, she put down the phone and said softly, "Brother, help me." "Of course I'll help," the boy said with a smile. "Lynn E. is my bro, and I want him to be my brother-in-law too. Don't worry, leave it to me. I'll continue to ask around for you." Fatty Lai anxiously stood guard in front of Lin Yi's room, not knowing how Linny was doing. He didn't dare to go in and ask, afraid that he would disturb Lin Yi's recovery. "Old Lai, who's inside? Why are you so nervous? Why did you bring strangers into our house?" Fatty Lai's wife looked at Fatty Lai and asked curiously, "What do you know? That's my boss. I'm following him now." Fatty Lai glared at his wife. "Shut up and get me something to eat. I'm starving." Chapter 588. Chapter 588. Miss Phone Wife Lai was afraid of the responsibility, so she reminded him. However, Fatty Lai was adamant, so she didn't say anything else. In fact, Fatty Lai was a smart man. Wife Lai knew that he wouldn't bring a dying person back for no reason. Fatty Lai paced back and forth in front of Lin Yi's door. Wife Lai quickly brought a bowl of noodles. Fatty Lai took 2 bites, and Lin Yi's phone rang. Fatty Lai looked at the caller ID. It was Tang Yun. He quickly picked up the phone. "Hello, sister-in-law. Fatty Lai? Where's Linny? Why isn't he picking up?" Tang Yun was very worried about Lin Yi's safety. Lin Yi hadn't come back after a few hours. He didn't even call. How could she not be worried? The two of them had just resolved their misunderstanding. They were stuck together like glue. Tang Yun wanted Lin Yi to come back quickly and stay by her side. Fatty Lai hesitated. "Boss is fine. He's a little tired. He wants to sleep for a while." "Sleep for a while?" Tang Yun froze. She felt that something was wrong. "Fatty Lai, tell me, what's wrong with Lin Yi? Wake him up." "Sister-in-law, boss is really tired. He just wants to rest for a while." Fatty Lai didn't want to lie to Tang Yun, but Lin Yi had told him not to tell Tang Yun. Fatty Lai was in a difficult position. He didn't know how to answer Tang Yun. After all, Tang Yun and Lin Yi had a special relationship. A normal reason wouldn't work. Fatty Lie, if you don't tell me the truth, I won't let Linny talk to you anymore. Tang Yun threatened anxiously. Hey. Fatty Lie screamed. He was troubled. Although Lin Yi didn't tell him to tell Tang Yun used Lin Yi to threaten him. Fatty Lie didn't know what to do. He's fine. Don't forget that boss is a miracle doctor. He's healing. Lin Yi's injured? Tang Yin asked, startled. Where are you guys now? He's at my house. Don't worry, sister-in-law. I'll tell Lin Yi to call you back when he wakes up. Fatty Lie explained. No, I'll go over now. Where's your house? Tang Yin panicked. Lin Yi was injured because of her. How could Tang Yin not visit Lin Yi? All right. Fatty Lie couldn't refuse, so he agreed. I'll get my wife to pick you up. It's late and I'm worried. Then I'll be troubling you. Tang Yin didn't want to be polite with Fatty Lie anymore. After all, it was related to Lin Yi's safety. Tang Yin didn't want to argue too much. The car number is Song A1234, a red Porsche. Fatty Lie told Tang Yun his wife's car number. He didn't want Tang Yun to get into the wrong car. After hanging up the phone, Fatty Lie called his wife over and asked her to pick up Tang Yun. Although his wife was confused, she didn't ask much. She went to the garage to get the car and drove to the hospital. From her point of view, someone that Fatty Lie paid so much attention to must be someone important. However, just when Tang Yun hung up, Lin Yi's phone rang again. Fatty Lie picked it up and froze when he saw the caller ID, because what was written on it was eldest miss. Who was miss? Fatty Lie didn't know what was going on. If Lin Yi called her miss, she must be someone important. Fatty Lie quickly picked up the phone. Lin Yi, where did you go? Why aren't you back yet? My daddy is here. Under normal circumstances, Meng Yao wouldn't ask about Lin Yi's whereabouts. But today, Lin Yi ran away without telling her. Meng Yao was unhappy. Besides, her father was here. He wanted to have dinner with Lin Yi. It was a way to thank Lin Yi for saving her. Peng Zhan's company was very busy. He only had time tonight. He asked Faubert to prepare some food from the restaurant and planned to have a drink with Lin Yi. But after waiting for a long time, Lin Yi didn't come back. Meng Yao asked Meng Yao to call him. If it was any other time, Meng Yao would ask Yushu to make the call. But her father was here, so she called him herself. Fatty Lie heard Meng Yao's tone and jumped in fright. Who was this miss? How dare she talk to Lin Yi like this? Moreover, who was her father? Why did she ask Lin Yi to have dinner with her? Could she be Lin Yi's boss? Her tone confused Fatty Lie a little. He didn't know who the miss was. Ugh, I'm sorry. I'm not Lin Yi. Fatty Lie said carefully. You're not Lin Yi? Where's Lin Yi? Meng Yao asked curiously. It wasn't Lin Yi. Ugh, may I know who you are? Fatty Lie wanted to confirm the miss's identity before deciding if he should tell the truth. I'm Lin Yi's. Ugh, I'm his boss. Meng Yao thought about it for a long time. She couldn't figure out her relationship with Lin Yi. So she came up with the term boss. And who are you? Fatty Lie jumped when he heard that it was Lin Yi's boss. Lin Yi's boss. Wasn't that his boss's boss? Fatty Lie quickly said, Hello, boss. Boss? What's that? Meng Yao didn't know what was going on. Lin Yi's my boss, so you're my boss's boss. Naturally, your boss. Fatty Lie explained. Oh, I don't care who you are. I'm looking for Lin Yi. Meng Yao was confused by Fatty Lie's words. Boss, he's injured. Fatty Lie said. He's healing now. What? Lin Yi's injured? Meng Yao was shocked. How did Lin Yi get injured? He couldn't help but feel nervous and anxious. What's going on? Is he all right? I don't know. He coughed up blood. He's healing in his room now. I don't dare go in. Fatty Lie replied carefully. Since the person was Lin Yi's boss, he didn't dare lie. Fatty Lie couldn't be blamed for believing Meng Yao's identity. After all, Lin Yi had the name, Misk on his phone. Coughed up blood. Meng Yao's heart tightened. She had never felt so worried before. She said anxiously, "Where are you? I'll be there right away." Ugh, it's so late. Should I get a car to pick you up? Fatty Lai didn't dare to delay. After all, he was the boss's boss. I have a car. Meng Yao interrupted Fatty. Lai, where is it? Hurry up. Chapter 589. The Miss and Tang Yun Meng Yao didn't say anything and hung up the phone. Meng Yao was panicking. Other than her parents and her best friend, Yushu, she'd never been this worried about anyone before. Fatty Lai said that Lin Yi was injured and even vomited blood. Meng Yao's heart was in a mess. Even if she had some complaints about Lin Yi, it all turned into worry at this moment. Dad, Lin Yi's injured. I have to go check on him, Meng Yao said to Pengzhan and pulled Yushu out. Pengzhan wanted to go check on Lin Yi when he heard that he was injured, but he hesitated when he saw his daughter's anxious expression. He sat back down and said, "Be careful on the road." Pengzhan was quite satisfied with his daughter's relationship with Lin Yi. It seemed that his daughter's care for Lin Yi was more than just that of a follower. Yushu was eating a sweet potato. It was a hot dish, and it wouldn't taste good if she didn't eat it while it was hot. Although Lin Yi wasn't here yet, that was Yushu's personality. No one would say anything if she started eating first. "Oh, Yao sis, why are you pulling me?" Yushu had just stuffed a piece of sweet potato into her mouth when Meng Yao pulled her. She almost choked to death. Her eyes rolled back. She was busy eating in the dining room and didn't hear the conversation between Meng Yao and Pengzhan in the living room. "Your shield bro's injured. Are you going to check on him?" Meng Yao glared at her. How could she eat so much? Why wasn't she fat? Or did her muscles grow to her breasts? She was quite envious of her physique. I'll go. How did Shield Bro get injured? Yushu was shocked when she heard that. She ran out with Meng Yao. "I don't know." Meng Yao shook her head and went to the garage to get her Audi S5. She drove Yushu to Lead Shore. Behind them, Falbert's Bentley also followed. Falbert and Pengzhan followed behind, worried that something might happen to the two girls in the middle of the night. Still, they wouldn't go see Lin Yi with them. Qianhua Waterfront District wasn't too far from Meng Yao's villa. Although he called later, he reached Fatty Lai's house first. Fatty Lai's wife, on the other hand, had to rush to the First People's Hospital from the Qianhua Shuyan District to the First People's Hospital. Naturally, she would be slower. Lai Changyi. Meng Yao recognized Fatty Lai as soon as she entered. Although she didn't know many people, she had attended many famous entrepreneurs' parties with her father. She remembered the names of some of the more powerful bosses in Songsan. Lai Changyi was one of them. Plus, his fat body left a deep impression on Meng Yao. "You your big boss? You know me?" Fatty Lai was pleasantly surprised. Having a good relationship with Big Boss would benefit him in the future. "My name is Meng Yao." "What big boss? It sounds terrible." Meng Yao frowned. "Where's Lin Yi?" Fatty Lai pointed at a closed door. "He's inside, but he won't let me in. He asked me to guard the door for him." "What's going on?" Meng Yao was worried about Lin Yi, but since Lin Yi didn't let others in, she couldn't just push the door open. It wouldn't be good if she helped and made things worse. Fatty Lai didn't dare to hide anything. He told her about how Lin Yi helped Tang Yun get revenge. From his point of view, Meng Yao was Lin Yi's boss. She should know about Lin Yi's girlfriend. Tang Yun. Meng Yao heard that Lin Yi was injured because he was avenging Tang Yun, and she felt uncomfortable. "Why? You're my shield, yet you're taking revenge for another girl, and you're even injured. Have you ever asked for my permission? Did I allow you to go? This Tang Yun was too much. Most importantly, didn't Lin Yi break up with Tang Yun?" She turned to Yushu. "The spy, Shu 007. Didn't you say that Linny broke up with Tang Yun? Ugh. Yushu heard it from someone else. She was unhappy when she heard that Linny got injured because of Tang Yun. If it was for Yao Yao Sis, it would be fine. But for another girl, she pouted. Looking at Yushu's face, Meng Yao knew that there was something wrong with her source. She glared at her and didn't ask any more. The more she thought about it, the more uncomfortable she felt. She wanted to see how Lin Yi was, but she couldn't. She could only stand in front of the door. Fatty Lai saw that Meng Yao didn't say anything. He didn't dare to reply. He stood beside Meng Yao carefully, waiting for her orders. After a while, the sound of a car came from outside the villa. It was followed by the sound of the door opening. A girl stumbled into the villa. Who else could it be if it wasn't Tang Yun? Tang Yun ran out from the bed directly. She didn't even change, out of the hospital gown. Her head was still wrapped in bandages. She followed Fatty Lai's wife. Beside her was Lu Xinwen. Fatty Lai, how's Lin Yi? Where is he? Tang Yun rushed over. Although Meng Yao and Yushu were there, she ignored them. In her eyes, there was only Lin Yi's safety. It was good enough that she could see Fatty Lai. Humph, he won't die. Meng Yao snored before Fatty Lai could speak. When she saw Tang Yun, her heart was filled with rage. Lin Yi was injured because of Tang Yun, so she didn't like Tang Yun at all. Seeing Tang Yun stumbling over, she was a little angry. But Meng Yao forgot that she was the same when she came in. Tang Yun saw Meng Yao and Yushu beside Fatty Lai. As one of the 3 campus beauties, Tang Yun naturally knew the other 2. She even talked to Yushu before. How could she not know them? Fatty Lai, how's Lin Yi? Where is he? Tang Yun ran over hurriedly. Although Meng Yao and Yushu were there, she ignored them. In her eyes, there was only Lin Yi's safety. It was good enough that she could see Fatty Lai. Humph, he won't die. Meng Yao snorted before Fatty Lai could speak. When she saw Tang Yun, her heart was filled with rage. Lin Yi was injured because of Tang Yun, so she didn't like Tang Yun at all. Seeing Tang Yun stumbling over, she was a little angry. But Meng Yao forgot that she was the same when she came in. Chapter 590. The defense of love. From the looks of it, they were here for Lin Yi as well. She asked hesitantly, "You guys." Meng Yao was about to say something when Yushu blinked her eyes and stepped in front of Meng Yao. "Let me introduce you. Yao Yao Sis, she's Shield Bro's girlfriend." Shield Bro? Who? Tang Yun didn't quite understand what Yushu meant. Shield Bro. Naturally, it's Lin Yi. Ha! Yushu smiled slyly. Lin Yi? Girlfriend? Tang Yun's eyes widened. She was Lin Yi's girlfriend. Okay? How did Meng Yao become Lin Yi's girlfriend? What was going on? If Xiao Xiao was here, Tang Yun could understand, but Meng Yao and Yushu were the 2 of them. She couldn't believe it. How did Lin Yi get involved with them? Meng Yao glared at Yushu, but the word girlfriend didn't resent her at all. Quite the contrary, it gave her a strange feeling. She didn't want to reject it. "Hello, I'm Meng Yao, Lin Yi's fiancé." Meng Yao elegantly extended her hand towards Tang Yun, raising her arrogant head and looking down at Tang Yun. At this moment, the eldest Miss Innate Nobility was displayed to the fullest. Tang Yun looked at Meng Yao, surprised. Lin Yi's fiancé? Tang Yun wasn't used to this. This was too sudden. She was Lin Yi's fiancé. Meng Yao was the famous miss of the school, the daughter of the chairman. She had a relationship with Lin Yi. Although surprised, Tang Yun still held Meng Yao's hand stubbornly. "I'm Tang Yun, Lin Yi's girlfriend. Why didn't I hear Lin Yi mention that he has a fiancé?" Seeing Meng Yao's attitude, Tang Yun was convinced. If the woman in front of her had nothing to do with Lin Yi, she wouldn't be here right now. However, she didn't believe that she was Lin Yi's fiancé. She'd just been tricked by Xiao Xiao, and her vigilance was high. How could she be tricked so easily? Even if the opponent was an arrogant miss, Tang Yun started to fight back. This was the first time she fought to defend her love. She didn't want to misunderstand Lin Yi again, because of some groundless things. "I've heard of you," Meng Yao said faintly. It had to be said that Meng Yao's words had taken the upper hand. She showed that her relationship with Lin Yi was closer than Tang Yun's relationship with Lin Yi. Lin Yi didn't hide anything from her, but Lin Yi hid something from Tang Yun. "Is that so? Since you've heard of me, then you should know that my relationship with Lin Yi is recognized by the school. Since when did you become Lin Yi's fiancé?" Tang Yun's words were sharp. She didn't fight before because she didn't want to, and she didn't need to fight for anything. But the feeling of losing Lin Yi these past few days wasn't a good one, torturing Tang Yun. Plus, with Meng Yao's words, Tang Yun straightened her back. She was Lin Yi's girlfriend. This was recognized. Tang Yun's words made it hard for Meng Yao to reply. She argued with Tang Yun because she wanted to win, but she had never been in a relationship with Lin Yi. She felt guilty instinctively. Seeing Tang Yun being so aggressive, she didn't know how to deal with it. However, she didn't want to admit defeat. She'd said it before, so how could she back down? What's wrong with that? Yao Yao Sis and Shield Bro's relationship was arranged by the family. There's no need to tell others. Isn't that right, Yao Yao Sis? Although Yushu would usually quarrel with Meng Yao, the two of them were on the same side right now. When there was an enemy, they would stand together to fight together. She put her hands on her waist and stood in front of Meng Yao. Arranged by the family? Tang Yun froze. Indeed, marriage between rich families wasn't a rare thing. If Yushu said it, it was possible. After all, Meng Yao's identity was there. If she didn't have a relationship with Lin Yi, why would she argue with her? Yeah, you don't know, right? Shield Bro and Yao Yao Sis are developing fast. They've even kissed. Yushu looked at Tang Yun and said proudly, "How about it? You guys haven't kissed yet, right?" Yushu's words shocked both Meng Yao and Tang Yun. Although Meng Yao was surprised, she didn't show it. She looked at Tang Yun proudly as if she agreed with Yushu's words. Why not? We've kissed before." Tang Yun looked at Yushu and said word by word, "We often kiss." Tang Yun was talking about the promise they made when they rescued the hostage in the hospital. Although they haven't carried it out yet, Tang Yun thought that it should be about the same. So she didn't want to be outdone. Lu Xinwen followed Tang Yun here, but she didn't know what was going on. She knew Meng Yao and Yushu. She knew that these two were the prettiest girls in the school. But their words shocked Lu Xinwen. Of course, what shocked her even more was Tang Yun's words. Tang Yun and Lin Yi kissed. Lu Xinwen had been trying to find out how far Tang Yun and Lin Yi had progressed, but there was no progress. Today, Tang Yun's self-exposure made Lu Xinwen sigh. So these two had reached this stage without saying a word. Oh, kissing isn't that big of a deal. Shield Bro often hugs Yao Yao Sis and touches her chest. Yushu released even more explosive news when she heard that Tang Yun had kissed Lin Yi. Meng Yao wanted to say that Lin Yi had never touched her chest before, but she knew that Yushu was fighting for her face, so Meng Yao silently agreed to Yushu's words. "Lin Yi touched my chest too." Tang Yun panicked. She subconsciously puffed out her chest. "His chest isn't as big as mine. It's not easy to touch." Tang Yun would never say something like this under normal circumstances, but even a rabbit will bite when it's cornered. Tang Yun was forced into a corner by Meng Yao and Yushu, so she didn't care about what she said. The words almost came out of her mouth. After saying it, even Tang Yun was shocked. Was this something she said? How could she be so shameless? How could she compare whose chest was easier to touch with other girls? How shameless was that? Lu Xinwen's eyes widened. Was this the good girl she knew? How could this be? This was crazy. Both of them started to touch breasts. You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.